Okay, so we're going to get started. I want to take a quick look at just a little bit of work. We're not going to look at that much work because well, it's great. I sent you all the comments about your specific piece, so you guys have that. We're actually going to do this entire project in class today. So I do want to show just a couple of things so that you understand some of the language that I am talking about. So it cracks me up the coloring that you guys put in on a lot of this stuff, which frankly I don't mind. It makes it a little confusing to get to, so I'm gonna clean these out just really quickly so that it looks more normal. Good use of smart objects though. All right, so what I wanted to look here is, and I've talked about this in a couple of scenarios, so we're gonna just look at the blue background mask here really quickly. So if you hold on your Option key and click on the eyeball, it turns everyone else off. And if you come up here and take a look at this, you can spot there's trouble that's happening right up in here. So a couple things that you should definitely think about doing when you're doing mask work. It is incredibly important that you look at the masks by themselves and also that you invert things so that you can sort of see what's going on. So the first thing I'm going to do is back out just a little bit, and we're going to take a look. I'm going to invert this mask. So here's the mask right here. Command I will invert it, and you can see what part of the problem is. This is what we call being too aggressive about this. So all of this fine hair is pretty much been butchered. And then I've got this line that's running along here that if you take a look at that, you can see there's a lot of holes in it. There's nothing smooth or continuous about this. If you hold down your Option key and then click on the mask itself, you can see the mask alone and you can see what the problem is right here. All of this stuff is actually missing and it should be there, but all of it's broken apart. So this is when I send you comments back and I say your mask is too aggressive, this is exactly what I'm talking about right here. And again, this was a problem that was common for everybody, so, or not everybody, but most people. So I just wanted to show you what it meant when I kept talking about being too aggressive. But again, the point that I'm trying to make here is look at your masks by themselves. You will spot contamination in them. I'll show you what contamination is in just a second. But you can spot other problems that you go, oh, okay, it's maybe not obvious in looking at the image as a whole, but when you start to look at the pieces by themselves, you'll start to see where those problems are. So I'm going to show you another one really quickly. So I'm turning off everything except for the hair, and then again I'm going to hold down the Option key to look just at the mask. And this is what I mean about the problems that you can spot in this right here. You see all of this hair that's in here. All of this should be white. This is not background in any of this. All of this can be cleaned out. If we take a look at the entirety by itself, you'll see that there's a little bit of background right here in this one spot, but nowhere else in here. And so so all of this does not belong in here. This is what we refer to as contamination in the mask. And you'll see it in other places as well, like over in this area in here. I doubt that it's in there, but anyway, this is that whole weird area where you're starting to see skin come through and all of that kind of stuff. So, but again, the two things that I wanted to actually get across to everyone. Oh, and actually there's another one. want to show you really quickly. So we went over too aggressive, we went over contamination. The last one is hand painted. And again, if we take a look just at the mask, you can see here that there is quite a bit of hand painting that's been done in here, and it's also making matters worse. It's also been done, at least in this area right here, with a soft brush. So when I talk about spraying ink out into the background or out, out of your mask, whatever, this is exactly what I'm talking about right here. Is you're running along with a brush. If it's a soft brush, you think you're hitting the line exactly where you want it to be, but stuff is getting sprayed out all over it. And then you can see there's an attempt to hand paint some of the curls and all of that kind of stuff in here. And it just, again, it's what we're trying to do here is build masks based on luminosity, based on color, just based on all sorts of selections. What we're trying to avoid at all costs is any hand painting. That being said, the hand painting on the inside, once you establish your edges, the hand painting on the inside makes sense. So I'm not saying that you would never hand paint on a mask to refine it, but never around the edges. Again, all of the edge work that we're trying to do, we want it based on luminosity, we want it based on color, we want it based on those sorts of things on edges, so that it looks, so it's highly detailed and it does not look hand painted. So that's what we're going to do today in class. So we're going to blow through this relatively fast. You guys already know that about me, but do me a favor. I want to make sure everyone does this and does all the steps of this. If you get lost or you get behind, just please give me a shout out and say, wait a second, give me 2 minutes to catch up, or I didn't get that, and I will come over and fix it so that you ultimately get through all the steps in this. So anyway, okay, to start with, I want to start with a virgin copy of this. So if you've only worked on one copy, just duplicate your assignment that you turned in and then go in and throw away everything. Throw away all the channels that you made, all the channels that you saved, the masks, the layers, all of those things. I just want to start with a completely fresh version of this that only has the one layer of her. So it'll just make things faster for us and less confusing. So it was in class number 3. It was in your assignment folder. And so I'm going to open up my version of this. Okay, so does everybody have a copy of this open with no extra channels and a whole bunch of layers and all that kind of shit over here? Are we good on this? Okay. So our first move to do in this is that we're going to make a copy of the background, obviously. So Command J to make a copy of it. And then I'm going to do the thing that none of you has thought about. Why on earth would you try to separate the skin underneath that hair? You'll never do it. It'll never work. Why on earth wouldn't you just get rid of that skin so that you don't have to select it? This is the way I need you to start thinking. Don't be so literal about a lot of the things in here. I want to separate this, but that'll never get separated. Not in a million years. So we're going to fix that right now. So I'm going to double click on this layer number 1 to rename it, and I'm going to rename it Pixel Retouch. P-I-X-E-L. So now we need to talk about how you actually do fix things like this. So most of you, your approach to this, what would you do to fix this? What would you do to cover this with hair? How would you do that? Okay, gonna be that kind of day. Clone stamp tool. So hit the S key to get the clone stamp tool, or come over to your toolbar. It's right below the brush tool, looks like a little stamp. If you click on the drop down menu in the lower corner, you'll see that there's two options here. So the clone stamp tool and the pattern stamp tool. You want to make sure that you have the clone stamp tool selected. And then in your menu items up at the very top, if you click on the drop down menu for the size and the hardness of your brush. So again, this is where things get tricky. So I'm just going to throw this out to you. So when most of the clone stamp work that you probably have done in your life, you use a very soft brush because it's less obvious. So what you're doing is you're sort of like blending in, we're going to use a patch of hair that we're going to put in here. And a lot of people believe that the softer the edge is, the more it will blend into the hair that's already there, the original hair. The problem with this is that what's happening is that a soft brush begins to, so if you're using a soft brush, in the center of the soft brush, it's what it lays down is 100% replacement. So, but as you start to move towards the edges, that replacement begins to fade until you get to the edge of the brush, the very edge of the brush, where it just fades away completely. The problem we have though is in that whole area where things are fading, you are mixing old texture with new texture. You are laying partially opaque texture, partial opacity of texture on top of other texture, and it just fucks it up. There's no getting around this. So you want to try to minimize that as much as you can. However, the other extreme is to use a completely hard brush, and then what happens there is you can see the perfectly hard edge where you're actually trying to do it. So in most cases, what you want to be doing is something in the middle, not really a 50%. You want to be more aggressive about this because I'm trying not to mix old texture and new texture any worse than I have to do it. So I'm going to start with a brush hardness probably around a 75% and see what it looks like. So I'm going to grab my hardness and drag it up to 75, 76%. Click on the area up near the word Adobe Photoshop to get that flyout menu to go away. Make sure that the blending mode of your brush is set to normal, 100% opacity, 100% flow. You'll see my flow is sitting here at 1%, so I'm going to crank that all the way up. And now we can actually use the brush. So this is how most of you have been taught to use it. I'm going to hover over, if you take a look up at my screen, there's a really dominant curl right here. I'm going to use this as my source point just to make a point. So I'm going to hover my clone stamp tool over that, hold down the Option key and click. This sets my source point. So what you do with the clone stamp tool is you pick the source first, and then you pick the destination where you want to replace it. So I'm going to be taking this area right here, and I'm going to be sticking it in this area that's over here. So I'm going to come over to the part where her skin is showing over here. I'm going to click, and I'm just going to run this up, and I'm going to run this down like this to fill in the skin that I know I will never be able to select. Yes?
My clone tool has an X on it.
Say what?
My clone tool, like I can't use it. They said I don't have anything selected, so I can't use it.
First I'll come up here, double there. You're good right there. You've got a smart object, that's why. It needs to be rasterized. So again, to click on that, come up to the layer menu, down to smart objects, over and all the way down to rasterize. Yeah, because you can't paint on a smart object. You can't paint, so you'll be able to use the clone stamp tool now. So what is the problem with this? Look at this. Can't you see this repeating pattern right here? This exact curl is this exact curl right here. Come on, guys, I could see this from fucking 5 miles away. There's no question that that's not a repeating pattern. So this isn't going to work for me. And you can even throw it off. If you hit Command Z to undo that, you can take the source here and you can start it at a higher point here so that it's not exactly on the very same parallel line, but you still can spot that a million miles away. So what we need to do is we need to come up with a way to patch this that we do not get this repeating pattern in. So we are not using the clone stamp tool. Hit Command Z to undo that. Instead, what we're going to do, I'm going to double click on the hand on mine to zoom back out so I can see everything. So when we do this, next thing, you want to make sure the mistake people make with what I'm going to show you, the method I'm going to show you right now, is that people always make the selections too small. You don't want to do that. We are going to select this girl's hair, but we're going to select the entirety of this girl's hair on the left-hand side. So hit the L key to get a lasso tool. I'm going to start here on her face, and I'm just going to drag all the way up. Your lasso tool works outside, so I'm going to go all the way up to my ruler. I'm going to come down on the other side. Look where my cursor is. I'm actually over the palettes because I want to make sure that the line that I'm getting is completely, is all the way, it's grabbing all the hair that I can, and then I'm going to come back up and let go. So I've got this giant selection. Again, the problem that everybody makes when they first start doing this is they select a small little part of hair, and then when you go to actually do the patch, you run out of hair. You don't have enough. So if you do a huge selection of it, you should be good to go. I'm going to hit Command J to actually jump that to its own layer. And you can see now I've got a layer number 1. And if you hold down your Option key and click on the eyeball, this is what I just copied over. So hold down the Option key and click on the eyeball again, and everybody will be visible. So I need to alter this hair. Yes?
So when I hit Command J, I didn't get the layer.
Do you have an active selection going?
I had it, and
Then you go back in history to where you have the selection.
so I just got the selection.
All right, and you're good right there. So Command J. There you go. You just trying to fuck with me, Miguel, and get me. Just come over here and look at me, whatever. I know I'm cute, but come on. Yes. Command J. Yeah. Again, guys, Command J just does. It'll either jump a layer that you've got selected, just to active, or if you have a selection going, it'll do that. Okay. Everybody got the selection? Yes.
I didn't make mine big enough.
Then throw it away, go back in history. It's the easiest way to do it. Just go back in history to where you did your, click on that. And, no, you need to, wow, you got other stuff going on in here. So come back to open. Just come back to when you opened it. Good. And you need to get rid of all those other masks and all those other layers. It looks like you may have, but just delete all the layers. And then come over into your channels and see if there's anything in there. You also need to delete. You're good. So this, you're going to Command J. Good. You need to rasterize that then. Now up to the layer, down to Smart Objects, down to Rasterize. Good. L key for lasso tool. Just the L key. Nope. Click and drag copy all of that hair. Nope, Command D. You gotta select all the way around.
Oh, this?
Yeah. No.
That's what I'm using.
I know. So you're doing this. You're clicking here and you're coming down like this and then letting go. It just goes back to the start point.
Oh, go around.
Go all the way around. And then hit Command J, or in your case, Control J. Perfect. And then jump it to its own layer.
Command J.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay, so now that we've got this thing, we need to change it. So we are going to transform it. So with the top layer selected, hit Command T, that is the transform control shortcut. If you can't remember that, come up to the edit menu, down to free transform. You'll see it's Command T right there, and just select that. So the first thing I always do with this is I rotate it. So if you take your mouse, if your mouse is on the inside of this selection of the transform rectangle, if you click, you can move it around. But if you come on the outside, you will see that your cursor turns into a double-headed arrow, and you can actually rotate it. And so that's the first move I always do, is I always put in a rotation, because what I'm trying to do is get it so that the horizontal and vertical references to the pattern are broken. So now you can see it's somewhat similar to this curl, but it is not identical. I keep referring to that one curl because it's the most recognizable. We can continue to transform this. I'm going to collapse it a little bit. So I'm going to grab the control handle on the side, and I'm just going to push it in slightly, because again, what that's doing now is it's changing the actual width of my image of the I'm going to call this the patch. I'm also going to make my patch taller. So I'm going to grab the handle on the very bottom, and I'm going to drag it out. So I'm stretching it out, I've rotated it, and I've compressed it. And so it will change again. We know that these two are now related to each other, but there is no way they are the same. They are not that recognizable. So I'm going to push the top up a little bit well, so I'm just stretching it out even just a little bit more. And then I'm just going to say, okay. So just click on the check mark that's up in your options bar all the way on the right-hand side, and we've got a patch on. We've got this patch to work with. Now, if you hit the V key, you'll get the move tool, and you can click and you can move this thing around. And what I want to do is I actually want to be able to cover this area. Don't worry about trying to get stuff lined up, but it's this area of skin that's showing through her hair here. I want to cover that up. So I'm just going to move this tool just so that it covers all of that stuff up. Do not worry about anything in terms of what's there or how good or bad it is. We're going to fix all of that. So then the next thing I'm going to do is add a black layer mask to this. The reason I actually use, now might be a time, if you do have your tablet, if you brought your big ass tablet, now might be a good time. We will do some work with this today, but a lot of it will be brush work like this. So if you want to grab your tablet, right now would be a good time. I'll give you a minute or two to grab it and bring it. So I sent out an assignment today, an announcement today saying that you, the real classes that I want you to have at your tablet here are the one today. This is our 5th session. Next week, our 6th session, and the week after, our 7th. Now, if you don't have a gigantic ass tablet and you're willing to bring that gigantic ass tablet, whatever, we will or possibly can use that the rest of the semester. But the next 3, this class and the next 2 after it, are the ones that I really want you to have it here. Otherwise, you can leave it at home and just use it, work with it when you're doing your homework at home, and you'll actually be fine. Okay, so I want to put an opaque mask on this. I want to start, yes. I'm sorry, what? Oh, you need adapters, right?
Also, mine says the driver thing, but the driver already came in.
Okay, then don't worry about this right now. But we can hang around during one of the breaks, and we'll download the software really quickly. A couple of people, myself included, have run into this. The software driver that I gave you for Wacom worked fine until it even worked fine for the first of the Tahoe OS upgrades. But with the version 2 of that, 2602 or 26.2, it broke that driver. But there's a new driver out, and you just need to load the new driver, and you should be good. Miguel, is your tablet working now?
No,
No? Okay, great. Did you go through the whole loading process? Yep.
I ran the driver. I even restarted it, make sure the privacy, like, it accepted everything, but it still doesn't.
Okay, all right, well, we'll take a look. Okay, so again, you don't have to use the tablet on this part, but nonetheless. So I want to put an opaque mask on here because right now I have no idea where this patch is supposed to go. So typically I will start with this situation. I will then use a mask to actually reveal where it should be. So I want to put a black mask on here. So there's a number of ways you can do it. If you hold down your Option key and click on the Add Layer Mask, it'll add one that is black. If you can't remember that, I'm going to hit Command Z to undo mine. You can always just click on the regular layer mask, which is white, and then with the brackets around it, you can invert it by clicking on the Invert button in the Properties panel, or by just hitting Command I. Either way, I want you to get a black mask on this. And now we can go in and actually use a brush to paint this whole part in. So I'm going to hit the B key to get a brush, but now the brush is going to be the same issue as the clone stamp tool. If you use a completely soft edge, wherever the edge starts to get really soft, you are going to allow old texture to show through, and it's going to then mix old texture and new texture, which is just bad texture. So I'm going to still work with roughly about that same hardness, so somewhere around 75%. Again, if you do it at 100%, you'll see the really hard line of the patch that we're actually putting in. So I've got mine roughly 75%, normal blending mode, 100% opacity, 100% flow, and then make sure that white is your foreground color. I'm going to hit the D key to default my foreground and background colors to black and white to make sure that they are, because there's some times where you'll have an extremely light gray and you might think it's white, but it isn't. Or you have an extremely dark gray and you think it's black, but it isn't. If you hit the D key, just as a matter of course, it will always be those two default colors, and then use your X key to go flip back and forth between black and white. So I've got white now is my foreground color, and I'm simply going to paint along this area to fill in all of that skin that I don't want to have to retouch out. And again, you're just looking, I'm looking to get it to match up with the curl lines that are sitting on the back side here. And a little bit like that. Yeah, and a little bit like that. Okay, so this is working for me right now. Unfortunately, I do have this pattern. I'm seeing something that's very similar to it again. We can talk about ways to fix that. But to give yourself the option of how to actually, of what you were replacing, not just a blind replace like we've done right now, you need to come over to this layer that's actually got this patch on it with the mask on it. You need to actually click on the chain link between the mask and the pixel content. This way you can leave the mask in place, because the mask is doing exactly what it should do. It's revealing those areas of skin. But I want to click on the mask itself, on the layer, the pixel content itself. With the chain link broken now, I can move the pixel content independent of the mask. So if you hit the V key to get the move tool, you'll see you can move this around. The mask is still controlling where it goes, but you can actually change up how this ultimately ends up looking here. So that's what I'm going to do on mine. I'm going to actually work this around a little bit so I feel a little bit better about what's going on underneath all of this. And I'm going to stop there. Yes? Yeah, make sure, guys, when you go, your eyes should go up to that options bar. You should need to check to make sure that your brush is set to normal, not to overlay or to color or to all the other blending modes that we're going to use. So at any rate, I'm happier with where this is going for me right now. I don't have enough of a curl. The curl that's right here, part of it's lost. It's been rotated. It's wider. It's more narrow. It's been stretched out. So if you feel like it's still too close to this, we can screw with that a little bit more. But anyway, so this is where I would start with this, just to avoid having to make or to try to make that selection of skin underneath. Now, I want this to not stay on separate layers here. So to merge this down, the patch layer, to merge it down into my pixel retouching layer, you hit Command E or Control E if you're on Windows. It has now merged it down into this. And then if you were still on the fence about this one little curl here, seeing too much similar to this one, I don't personally think it is, but then you could clone stamp this out. So I'm going to hit the S key to get the clone stamp tool, make it a little bit smaller, and I'm just going to grab something from somewhere else. I'm going to pull something from probably right over in here, right very close to this, but right over in here, kind of next to it. Hold down my Option key to set my sample point, and then just knock that part out. And so this is how I would remove the skin, not remove the skin, but hide the skin. This now is a pixel retouching on here. I'm going to Command J that, and the Command J that's now called Pixel Retouch Copy, I'm going to change that name to NV. It stands for New Version, and this is where we start. This also new version doesn't get changed. I am now going to make 4 copies of this. So Command J, 2, 3, 4. Yes.
I was lost in doing the hair, so I didn't see when you moved the layer into the pixel retouch.
Yeah, just pick on the layer, select it, and Command E. Done. Then Command J to make a new copy, rename it NV. Oh, mine didn't get renamed NV. So NV, and then the first one, we're just going to name these backgrounds. I'm going to do blue background. And sweater. And skin. And finally hair. Okay. I'm going to turn off every one of the 3 on the very top, so I've only got the blue background visible. You can even turn off the ones underneath it. It doesn't really matter. It makes things less confusing. Anyway, so that's what I'm going to do. So blue background is selected. I'm going to double click on the hand. So there's a number of ways that you can go after this blue background. We could do the channel version, so I could look for my red channel right here. If we have time at the end of today, we may go back and I'll show you a couple of tricks about this, but that's not how I'm going to start this process right here. So that would be one option. We have other options available to us, and the options that I want to try on this is simply, again, one of the AI selection tools. Let's see how good this thing actually works. I have pretty solid edges here, so I'm hoping that Select Subject will actually give me a decent selection of this. To find out, you can either come up to the Select menu and down to Select Subject. The problem with this is that it doesn't give you the option to change whether you want to do this locally on your computer or up in the cloud, sending it up to Adobe servers. Now, we set our preferences to say that by default, when you use Select Subject, that it would do the upload version, that it would go up to Adobe servers, that it would be cloud-based. However, if you come down to the 4th tool underneath on your toolbar from the top down, this is where the Object Selection tool is and the Quick Selection tool is. I want you to go ahead and select Quick Selection, because now you actually get in your options bar a Select Subject with a drop-down menu. And if you click on that drop-down menu, you'll see you can either do it on your device or in the cloud. In my case, the cloud was already picked because my preferences are set to be that way, which is what we want. And then I'm just going to click Select Subject. So it's made a selection of this. I have no idea how good the selection is, so I'm going to find out right now. I'm actually going to add this as a layer mask onto my blue background. So click on blue background layer to make it active, and then we're simply going to add a layer mask. Again, once you have marching ants going, those marching ants, if you add a layer mask or if you add an adjustment layer, it will put that on as a mask for you. And then I want to take a look at this to see how good I think this thing is. So I'm looking at the area up in here. It's picked up a whole lot of the fine hair in here. I like this part. Again, it's showing the reverse right now, but it's easier for me to see whether this is working looking at the figure than it is just at blue. So I'm going to make sure that this is correctly done looking at this figure, and then we'll just invert it. So to make sure that it's getting what you think it is, hover over the mask, hold down your Shift key and click, and it will turn it off. And you can turn this on and off and on and off, and you can see it's missing some of the fine little hairs that are sitting right in this area right here. So I would like to get those back if I can get them back. I don't know if I can, but that's what I'm going to try to do. So I'm going to turn this mask off so that you don't see this, and we're going to go into the Select and Mask workspace. So again, you do not want any other layer eyeballs on. You just want the eyeball for this one. You also have a select and mask button now up at the top, which will allow us to refine this edge. Or you can go to the select menu and come down to select and mask, or in the properties panel, there's also a select and mask button. So if you click on that, it will actually bring us into this space. Now, when it comes in here, again, we're on the onion skin, and it's really hard to tell what we want to do in this. So I don't want to be on the onion skin. What I want to do is put this on layers. So come all the way down to on layers. So this is showing me what my problem is right now. This is what my image looks like back in Photoshop, even though we're here in the select and mask workspace. So I'm going to click on that to get the flyout menu to go away. And then you'll notice up at the very top of this, right next to select subject, you now have another button called refine hair. I'm going to click on that and see what happens. Now in that case, I think it makes things worse. It actually just got rid of more hair. So the thing about refining edges and all that kind of stuff is you cannot trust this. You can't hit the button and blindly say, well, that's better. You need to look what happens, and that is clearly not better, that is worse. So Command Z to undo that. It'll bring back those parts. I'm gonna see what the refine brush will do then. So not the top brush, which is the quick selection tool, but the one right underneath it. I'm gonna pick that brush, and I'm gonna zip back out just a little bit so I can see all of the hair. And I'm just gonna click and run this brush down this whole side like this to see what happens. Come all the way down and then let go. And in this case, again, I think even worse. So I'm gonna say Command Z to undo that because that did even more damage to this guy. So I'm gonna cancel out of this. The refining edge tools are not working on this at all, in my opinion. So then I'm gonna try one other thing to see if by any chance the select subject works better locally. So temporarily, I'm gonna click on the sweater mask layer at the top, above the one that we're on right now. I'm gonna turn this one off. I'm only temporarily using this so that I can compare the local version or the device version and the cloud version. So I've just turned off right now. I'm pretty happy with the blue background the way it is, but I just want to see if we can do a little bit better. So I'm going to select the layer above it now. That's the only one with the eyeball on showing. I'm going to go back to my select subject, but use the drop-down menu first and select device, and then hit select subject. And then put a layer mask on it. And so this is now what my edge looks like here. And it turns out that I've got a whole lot more of that fine little hair in there. If you want to see what the two of these look like really quickly, it's very hard to turn one layer off and turn another one on. So instead you use history snapshots to do this. So I'm gonna come over to my history palette, and at the very bottom there's a little camera. I'm gonna click on that, and you should get this new snapshot dialog box opens up. Did anyone not get this? Okay, I'm gonna hit cancel out of mine. To make sure you get it in your history palette, come up to the top of the history tab. Across, you wanna pick on the drop-down menu, come down to history options, and you want to have these four checked. You want automatically create first snapshot, automatically create new snapshot when saving, show new snapshot dialog by default, and then make layer visibility changes undoable. That's a default one, and say okay. Now when you click on that little camera, you will get this, and this is what our image looked like with the select subject done by device. So that's what I'm gonna put in here, device. And say okay. Then I'm gonna turn that eyeball off, and I'm gonna turn on the eyeball for the select subject that was done in the cloud, and I'm gonna create another history snapshot. So click again on the camera, and we're gonna call this cloud, and say okay. And then you can come up to the very top of your history panel, scroll up to the very top, and you'll see you have two history states. One is device and one is cloud. So if you click on device, you can see what it is, and if you click on cloud, you can see what it is. If we zoom out, which I would suggest you do before we accept this, and go back to device, and then to cloud, and device. I want to zoom into the hair that's on the lower part and make sure I feel like that's better. Cloud, device. Cloud actually seems a little bit darker in there, in that area, but there's no question that device does a better job for the small hair that's up on the edge of her head. So I'm going to go with the device one. So these history snapshots, you can save them, you can throw them away. They've done their work. I don't care. I'm going to leave them as they are right now. I'm going to come back down to my blue background, and I'm going to grab the layer mask that is on my blue background and throw it away, because that's the one that was made by the cloud. So just grab the layer mask, drag it down to the garbage, and when it says, do you want to apply it? Never fucking apply it. Applying it is a destructive move. It just removes pixels. It doesn't do us any good. You want to hit delete. And then we're going to go to the sweater layer, the one that we temporarily were using to see what the device would do. Simply grab that layer mask and drag it down onto your blue background. So now it's masking the correct part. I'm going to turn off the sweater eyeball. I'm going to turn this guy on. And then to check it even further, I'm going to hold down the Option key and click to take a look. And I like the way that this thing looks. It's got a lot more hair in it. I'm feeling pretty good about that. This whole part down in here, I'm feeling relatively good about that. So everything is looking pretty good to me. So I'm going to stick with this. Then just click back on it so you can see everything, and then on your layer mask, make sure the brackets are around the layer mask, invert it. So click on the little invert button or Command I or whatever, double click on the hand, and this is the beginning of our blue background. And at this point, I would save your work. So up to the file menu, down to save as, and then make sure it's a Photoshop or a TIFF file, put it somewhere where it matters. Okay, one down. I'm going to turn off the eyeball. Did everybody get this? Are we good? All right. I'm going to go to the sweater layer now and turn this one on. And for the sweater layer, I'm going to try a completely different method on this. For the sweater layer, I'm actually going to try straight out the select and mask workspace. Now, there are other options that we could try on this. We could try the object selection tool. So we'll try both. We'll do, like we just did 2 versions of the select subject. We'll do 2 versions of this. So let's start with the object selection tool. So to get to the object selection tool, again, it's the same place where you have the quick mask, the quick selection tool. It's at the very top, so click on the little lower right-hand corner so you get the thing that you can see on the very top, the object selection tool. And when you do that part, if you come over, you might get this red overlay to begin with. You also, if you hover down over the mask, over the sweater, you might just get that part. But if you click anywhere in this thing, so I'm just going to click on the sweater, but you'll also notice that you get a select people at the top now. So what the quick selection tool has done is, the object selection tool, it's gone through and it's parsed out every single thing in this image. It's looking for all the bits and pieces that are in this image. So it's looking for skin, it's looking for hair, it's looking for teeth, for eyes, all that. If you click on the select people, you'll see that there's a person right here. If there's multiple people in your image, you will have multiple little face shots of each one of them. And if you only want to select the sweater on one person, you just click that person. You will get a drop-down menu, and every item that Photoshop thinks it can find, it will actually name for you. And so in our case right now, it's really just the upper close. That's what's actually making this up. So I'm going to go ahead and say okay to that, and then hit apply. So I've got these marching ants going. However, if you'll notice, zoom into the area. It's right at the back of her neck. A lot of you guys missed this part at the back of her neck. And you can see if I use my object selection tool and I hover over that, it selects the entirety of her neck. So it doesn't understand that that's something separate. So I've got to get this at a separate way. If I come up to the sweater that's up by her thumb on the other side of her face, there's sweater showing there. It does the same thing. It thinks it's all part of the hand. So none of these tools are actually going to help me out any more than I am than where I am right now. So I'm going to go ahead and use this selection that I've got going on right now on the sweater. So select the sweater layer, and let's go ahead and add a layer mask to this. Again, if you still get the little pink hands and the weirdness, it's because you've still got the object selection tool going. Just select the move tool or some other tool and you can sort of see where we're at. Now, I know that there's 2 missing places on here and I've got a hole that's right in the middle of my image right here. I don't want that hole that's in the middle, but we can fix all of this later if we decide that this is how we're going to go about doing it. But the mask actually looks pretty good. So I'm going to do the same trick that we did before. I'm going to work with the skin layer now that's just on top of this to see what the Select and Mask workspace can do for me and then and allow me to compare both of them. So to do that, I'm going to turn off the sweater layer eyeball right now. I'm going to turn on the eyeball for the skin layer. I'm going to select the skin layer to make it active, and then I'm going to try the Select and Mask workspace. So up to the Select menu, down to Select and Mask. And again, at the very top is the quick selection tool. That's what we're going to start with. So do not let this tool touch any edge you want it to find. I want it to find the edge of where the sweater is touching her neck. If you actually run the brush across that line, it will no longer look for that line. It will start looking for a line. It will probably find the line where her fingers are touching her neck. So again, stay away from the edge you want it to find, but I'm going to click and I'm just going to run my way down, and it's done a pretty good job down there. I'm going to come across to the sleeves. You can let go, temporarily grab the hand, move over, start running yourself back up for the other sleeves and the other shirt on the other top of her shoulder. You can see areas in here that are checkerboard. That tells you that these have not been selected. So again, go ahead and work your way through all of those. I'm going to zip back out and make sure that this tool has done the job I hope it will do. It looks pretty good. I'm going to zoom in again. I know that the object selection tool couldn't make that selection of the little thing that's behind her neck or the one that's on the other side. The quick selection tool doesn't do it doesn't do a good job of this either. It's using the same tech. But I'm going to see how this works. So in my all the way down at the very bottom of my properties panel that's on the right hand side, you're going to do this output to a layer mask in that drop down menu. You don't want to do selection, you don't want to do new layer. You could do a new layer with layer mask, but there's no reason for this. We're just going to see how these two compare. So layer mask, and then say OK. So now I'm going to double click on the hand. So this is the selection that I've got that's actually been made now using the Select and Mask workspace. So again, I want to see which of these I think has done a better job. So right now, the one that I've got is the one that was done with Select and Mask. So I'm going to do another history snapshot, and I'm just going to call it SELMASK, Select and Mask, and say OK. Then I'm going to turn the eyeball for the skin one off, and then turn the sweater one on. Remember, this is not for the skin. We're just temporarily using it to be able to see both of these back and forth. I'm going to do another history snapshot now of the sweater one. This is the one that we used the object selection tool. So OBJSEL, and say OK. And then I can come up to the very top, and you will see underneath this, I've got Select and Mask, what it looks like, and the Object Selection tool. So I'm going to zoom in to this area. This is the trickiest area, I think, is where the hand and the sweater are actually against her neck. I'm going to click on the Select and Mask version, and you can see it's a pretty soft line in there, and then the Object Selection tool. And it's a much harder line in here, and actually that harder line I like. The Select and Mask is way too soft in here. There is real texture and line in there. Again, if you want to see what it is we can't see, if you come over to your layers palette, you'll see it's this top layer, the one that we've actually got on right now. If you hold down your shift key and click on the mask, it gets rid of it and bring it back on. And you can see there's all this scalloping along the edge of this that in the Select and Mask version, we lose. But in the Object Selection version, we keep. So the Object Selection version is obviously much better. So I'm going to throw away the version of this mask that was on the skin layer. That was the one that we used Select and Mask to do. And again, do not apply it, delete it. And then I need to fix two spots on this. I need to fix the spot that was back by the back of her neck, and then the other spot that's actually on the other side between her fingers. Other than that, this mask is in good shape. I want to take a look at the cuffs. They're in pretty good shape right here. If you zoom in to where the two cuffs meet, you might see a small little bit of skin in there. I do, so I'm going to fix that. And you'll also spot a big hole that's right in the middle of this sweater. I have no idea why that is, but it is. We need to fix it. If you hold down your Option key and click on the mask, you can see the problem right here. So I'm just going to hit the B key to get a brush. And again, I want white to be my foreground color, and I'm just going to paint to get rid of that. While I'm in here, I'm going to take a look around at the rest of the stuff that's in here. I want to make sure that I don't have any contamination in here. Everything's looking pretty good. I'm still going to go after the areas that are missing and also that little bit of skin that's in the corner. So to finish this, I'm going to click on the layer mask again. I mean, just the pixel content again. But now I know what I need to fix. So I'm going to start with the space that's on the far left-hand side by her neck that I know is missing. Now, we can't see it right now because the mask is hiding it. So just hold down the Shift key and click on your layer mask to temporarily hide it. And then I'm going to go after this with the pen tool. So I'm going to hit the P key to get the pen tool. And now in this case, you can actually start your selection well into her sweater right here. So take a look at my screen. You don't need to make this top hump right here. It's already there. The only thing that's missing is this little part that's in the back. So I'm going to start somewhere just here inside of my sweater so that I can attack this with a good point. And then I'm just going to run my pen tool along the line. Again, remember, don't do straight line parts. All of these tend to have a little bit of curve in them. And I'm going to come out to here. If you make a mistake like I just did, don't try to move shit. Don't try to change shit. Just hit Command Z to undo that and then fix it. And I'm going to come up to the top. And then when you come back, the underline, it's actually is relatively straight, but not perfectly straight. So I'm just going to put a slight amount of bend in it and then complete my selection. And then I'm going to do everybody all at once. So I'm going to go over to the other side now. I'm not going to change my path. I'm going to leave it where my path is. But you can see on the other side over here, I need to keep the sweater part right here. I don't have that. I don't want to keep this whole thing. I don't want to keep the blue. I just want the sweater part. So I'm going to start right up here underneath her finger. If you come down, you should notice that this is the underside of her thumb. She has a thumbnail that you can see. You do not want to make that a part of the sweater. It isn't. So come down, click on this, and then we are going to trace the thumbnail part. Sorry. To make sure that you have that selected. And then I'm going to come back down to the skin part down here at the bottom. Again, hold down the Option key to click because we're shifting direction radically. And bring this back. And more. And then finally close it off with a little bend. So that part's working out well for me. I'm going to double click the hand. Those are the only two real problem areas that I was missing. So I'm going to go to my path palette right now. You want to double click on the name work path. We've spent time selecting these things. I want to save them, and if you don't name the path that they're on, this work path thing, the minute we start to do a path somewhere else, this thing will get lost. You will lose these, so I don't want to do that. Double click on the name work path, and I'm going to call this missing sweater. Miss sweater. Or whatever you use, just so that you have some idea of what's going on. I now have my missing sweater parts. I'm going to hover over the thumbnail of this, hold down the Command key, and click. It loads it as a selection. If I then go back to my sweater layer right now, if you click on the sweater to remove the X, you'll actually see that there are two sets of marching ants that are on here. Again, I want these areas to show. These are now, I want them to be visible. However, our lines here are too sharp. Again, this is the thing we talked about last week. The path tool, it creates these perfect lines, but they tend to be a little too sharp. So I want to soften them up before I actually fill this with white, which is what I'm going to do. Up to the select menu, down to modify, down to feather, and I'm going to put in a 0.5. You can do tenths of a pixel in the in this dialog box. So I'm going to just put in a 0.5 pixels and say, okay, it just takes a little bit of that edge off. And then again, with the brackets around the sweater mask, you want to fill this with white. So white is my foreground color. Option delete will fill that. Command D will deselect that. And this is now my sweater mask. And I'm going to save my work. Up to the save file menu, down to save, because you've already named it and put it in a place. Okay, it is 2 o'clock, and I think this is a great time to take a break. But first, is everybody this far? Has everybody got the blue background and the sweater showing on empty layers? Are we good on this part? Okay, so I'm going to pause the video. Make it a hard 10, guys. Be back at 2:10, and we'll finish the last two. You'll be shocked at how quick it goes. So, back at it. So we've now got the blue background. We've got the sweater. Things are looking good. I still zoom into that area that's right between her cuffs. Do we feel like that's a little bit of skin that's right in there? That's a really tough call, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. So the P key to get a pen tool, and we're just going to take a little bit of this out. And again, if you go back to your path palette now, you'll see you have a new work path. The original missing sweater one has still got those paths on it, but because I've started another work path here that's named work path, I'm going to double click on this and I'm going to call it wrist and say OK. Command click on the thumbnail to load it as a selection. Go up to the select menu because I need to soften it a little bit. Up to the select menu, down to modify, down to feather. It still has that half a pixel in it. I'm going to say OK to that. And then if we go back to our layers palette and we are working on our layer mask for the sweater, I need this to be hidden. It's showing skin that should not be there. So I need this to be hidden, means I need to fill this marching ants with black to hide it. Black is my background color right now, so Command or Windows Control and delete or backspace. Command D to deselect. So now I've cleaned that little bit of skin out of there. Again, I would save my work, Command S. I'm going to double click on the hand, and the next one I'm going to go after is the skin. So I'm going to turn on the skin. I'm going to turn everybody else off so that I can just see this. I'm going to try select and mask again with this one. I think it's probably the best version. We can look to see what the object selection tool will do again here. The object selection tool actually did a better job, I think. That's what we ended up using for the sweater. So maybe object selection will work better here. So we can try it if we want to do that. So let's do it. We'll go ahead and try it. So again, I've got now the skin selection is the skin layer is selected. I am going to grab the object selection tool. Again, fourth tool down, the one at the very top, object selection. And I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to click on her face. Again, you could select people and then go through the whole thing and face and nose and all that. I'm not going to do that part. I'm just going to click on this. That'll actually load that as a selection. Now, if I want to add to this, which I do want to add to this, I'm hoping that I can just hold down my Shift key and click on her nose and it will select all of that as well. It does not seem like it wants to do that. I'm going to hold down the Option key then and click and see what that does. Yeah, so this right off the bat is not helping me out here. This is far too frustrating for me to control. It didn't get the mouth. It didn't do all of that kind of stuff. I am not going to waste my time with this. Command D to deselect. And again, get away from the, you need to get away from the object selection tool if you don't want to keep seeing these pink overlays on your image. So I don't want to see those. So back with my skin layer selected, and it's the only eyeball that's on. I am going to go up to the select menu and down into the select and mask workspace. I'm now working on the onion skin. So if you click on the drop down view menu, we do want to be on the onion skin because it's an easier way to view our what we're trying to select here. So make sure you're on the onion skin. This is an image where 50% transparency works pretty well. Again, remember that transparency slider, if you take it all the way in one direction, you don't see any of your image. All the way in the other direction, you see your total image. So I want to hover over the middle. But sometimes, depending on the content of your image, it's better to go a little bit more positive or a little bit more negative. It'll just be easier to see what we're trying to do. But this image works out really well at 50%, so that's where I'm going to leave my transparency. Select the tool that's at the very top. This is the quick selection tool. And remember, you do not want this tool to touch any edge that you want it to find. So you want to stay away from actually touching the hair. So I'm going to click up here in the top of her forehead, and I'm going to just start to work my way down. And I feel good about that. Now this just selected all of the hair on the left-hand side. Don't worry about that. We'll fix that. I'm going to come down and select the hands and the neck and the other hands and the other neck and the fingers and all of that part. So I'm feeling pretty good about the selection part that it did. It stayed away from the sweater. And the interesting thing about this is that her skin tone and the sweater are really close to each other in terms of tone and color. So anyway, it's done a pretty good job of that, so I'm happy about that part. I don't want the hair selected, so I'm going to add the Option key, which will put a little minus sign in the middle of my quick selection tool and allow me to then run down this side of her head to actually undo that part, and then also along the very top. It'll allow me to get rid of that part that's up in there. So I feel pretty good about this. I've got some problems, and you can see the problem I've got right down in here is the little bit of hair that's sitting in this area along with the blue that's actually also in that area. That's actually going to be a challenge. We can try to do this with the quick selection tool. I'm not thinking that's the best tool though, so hold off on that for just 1 second. I'm going to look around the rest of this mask. I'm feeling pretty good about this. I think that the edge that's running along the left-hand side where the hair is meeting the skin is just, it's too strong. It looks hand-painted here. So I'm going to use the next tool down. It's the one that's the Refine Edge tool, so the one under the Quick Selection tool. Go ahead and click on that. Bring this over, and I'm not going to hit this hair really hard. Again, we filled in a lot of those spaces, but I am going to run this along the edge and see if I like what I think it's actually doing. And so for me, it seems to be cleaning out part of this. I sort of like that part. It's done a little bit better. It seems a little less, it seems a little more organic to me, for lack of a better way of putting it. I am going to try it along the top of her forehead as well to see what it does up there. And I kind of like what, again, that's now a gradual gradient going out to the hair. I kind of like that part. I'm going to make this brush smaller. Again, you don't want to run it where you don't need it. And I'm going to run it down the line on the other side of her face. And stop. I kind of like that part as well. I think it's making it better. I'm going to run it on the eyelash. It actually brings the eyelash back. And then down the lower part of her face as well. All of those things I think were positive moves. I am going to move into that area that's between her fingers and see if it will actually grab this hair that's in here. So I'm going to click on that and see, and it doesn't do anything, so that's not going to help me. Command Z to undo that. I'm going to go back to the quick selection tool and see if I can do a really small one of those to get a little bit of the hair that's on the inside of this. So I'm just going to click in this area right in here and let go. I can't tell if that did anything. So to see if it did anything, go to your view menu, click on the drop down menu and come down to on black and white. And you can see it didn't change anything in that space. So it didn't select a thing in there. So I'm wondering why that actually is, but it's not. Oh, I know why this is, because this is actually already all selected and this shouldn't be selected. So you can see how clear this looks compared to the hair that's on the outside. So all of these areas in here need to have this removed. So again, using the quick selection tool, hold down the Option key, and we're going to paint in this area right in here. And you can see it's going to clean that part of that out. Now, when I look at this, I'm not really happy with how this is looking, but we're gonna see what we can get out of this. So it's screwing up the fingers and stuff, so I'm gonna let go of the Option key and see if I can't get the finger back there, and also the lower part of the finger right here. It actually grabbed both of those pretty well. I'm gonna go after this part right there. So now it's actually not selecting these things. However, I do not have the hair in here, and I do want the hair in here. So I'm gonna try the next tool down, the Refine Edge tool now, make it smaller. And I'm just gonna run that across the hair part and see if it will pick up any of the hair that's actually in here. And it's not doing a very good job of it. I'm just asking too much of the tool. So I'm gonna have to figure out a way to actually fix that part. So I'm gonna go back in space with Command Option Z to get rid of all of that Refine tool part right here, except for that hand. Okay. Then I don't want any of the sweater part that's in here either. The problem with this is I'm going to try using holding down the Option key with the Quick Selection tool and see what it does in here. And actually, that's not the worst job in the world. We'll probably have to clean this up a little bit with the pen tool, but feeling pretty good about that. I'm going to zip back out now. And it's missed some hair on this other side over here. I don't want this hair missed, so Quick Selection tool, see if we can't pick that up. Sorry, Quick Selection tool with the Option key and see if we can't clean that up. And again, I'm gonna use the Refine Edge tool on this one as well. And just run it down this line and see if it'll pick up the rest of those little hairs. Yeah, it's actually done a better job. And then this area right by her hand in here, I don't want, I know it's not hair in here. I know that this is skin in here. So again, go back to the Quick Selection tool, hold down the Option key, and I'm sorry, just the regular key. And we're gonna try to add that part in there. And I think that that part's actually a better call in here. So I'm feeling pretty good about this mask. Again, all it's showing is the skin now. I'm zooming around to take a look at everything else out. Again, I told you guys already in this that you didn't need to remove the eyes, you didn't need to remove the teeth. You could leave all of those in for this. The one area that I feel like is still off is the eyebrow that's on this side right over here. So we've already run the Refine Edge tool on this. That's what actually has caused the problem. So we can go to the last tool down, not the last tool, but the last brush down, the next one. This is just a regular brush. I'm going to make this brush a little bit softer, if I can make this brush softer, and I can't. Oh, yeah, in my drop-down menu. I'm going to go ahead and make this 50% hardness on the brush. Make it smaller using the bracket keys just to the right of my P key. And I want to bring back the whole, it just allows you to paint. I want to bring back the whole of the eyebrow in here. So I'm just going to bring those parts back in. It brought back in a little too much of the hair that's right next to the eyebrow where it's running into it. So hold down your Option key and it'll be the opposite part of the brush. Or I'm going to Command Z to undo all of that and just use this brush and I'm going to avoid hitting that area. All right. So things are looking pretty good to me here. So this is what I'm going to go with. So if you want to see what your mask is going to look like, click on the drop-down view mode and come down to black and white. And this is basically where we've got going. So I know I can clean up certain areas. That line right there seems a little bit hard. I know I can actually clean up a few more of these areas using an overlay brush. So I'm feeling pretty good about how this thing looks right now. Take a look down here. Yep, everybody seems to be relatively good. So again, in the very bottom of your selection, we're of the palette, the properties panel, we are going to do this to a layer mask, and I'm going to go ahead and say OK to that. And this is what we end up with. Now it's picked up, all of this blue is still in here, so apparently I did not get that out of my layer mask. So you can go back into that space. So I'm gonna go right back into Select and Mask. I'm gonna go back up to the onion skin. And this whole area in here never got selected. So again, it's all still there. So I need it to be hidden. It has been selected. So I'm going to go to my quick selection tool at the very top, make it a little bit bigger, hold down the Option key, and just clean the rest of this out. And also that part that is on the back part of her sweater. And then I'm going to say okay to that. And now this has cleaned it up. Now I can take a look at the mask itself. You can see I've got some problems right down here at the very bottom. You can fix those just with a brush. So grab a B key to get a brush. In this case, you want to make it a completely hard brush. Again, you do not want to overspray any of this stuff, so I want to keep this clean. Black is going to be my foreground color because I want to hide these, and it's all these mistakes. So again, I'm working on my layer mask right here, and I'm just going to click and clean up all of this junk that's right here. There's junk on the top of her shoulder right there. There's a small spot right there. I'm going to not go after the edge of her hair yet. So I'm going to take a look at the rest of everything that's going around here. I'm still missing this part of her hair that's in the center of here. I'll figure out another way to actually get that in just a second. Now, if you want to work and do a little bit more on your layer mask itself, you can hold down the Option key and click on it, and you'll see it by itself. So I've got areas in here that I think I could clean out just a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to an overlay brush. I'm going to really drop the flow of my overlay brush down. I'm going to take it down to like a 1 or 2, 3%, 2% in there, probably. I want to clean this out. It's too dark in this area, but I don't want to kill all this fine, beautiful hair that I've got in here. So with a very low flow on your brush, using your tablet, what I'm going to do is change my foreground color to white, and then I'm going to zoom into this area. And then on things like the fingernail right here, I can just continue to scrub back and forth on this. My flow is too low. It'll take you too long to do it. So bring your flow up to like 8%, 10%, something like that. Overlay, actually, yeah, I am still on overlay brush. And let me check my edge really quickly. You don't want this as 100% hard edge. Make it a 50% edge. And that way we can actually work this out. I'm just scrubbing back and forth. And then I can just work my way along areas right here. I'm just really loosely hitting this to clean out a little bit of that dark area that's behind there. Again, I'm damaging some of the fine hair, but I'm also cleaning up. So it's sort of a compromise. I'm going to hit this area that's right next to that hard edge that I actually did in the Select a Mask workspace. That seems pretty clean to me. The area that's up at her hairline up here, I think needs to also be cleaned out a little bit more. So I'm just running my brush back and forth here, trying to stay away from the hair. If I feel like I was too aggressive with that, you can hit the X key and you can bring in a little tone back into the top of it. I think that looks pretty good. I've got an edge along here that all needs to be cleaned out. So I'm going to go X key back to white. I'm going to bring my flow all the way back up. I'm going to keep this as an overlay brush, but now you can actually just run it down this whole edge, and you will clean up all that stuff that's laying out. That's still on her skin. The eyelash, if you wanted to keep the eyelash, again, we would actually change this. I can hit this repeatedly here to get rid of that part, and then hit the X key to get black, and hit the other side to remove that. And then X key to go back to white to clean up just a little bit of the hair around here. I'm going to try to fix the rest of this using the pen tool because the quick selections tool have done a horrible job in here. So then I'm going to click on this to see what the rest of my image looks like. And again, with the exception of the area that's in here, it's actually looking pretty good. I think the hair part in here is actually pretty good. All of the rest of this is pretty good in here. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and temporarily turn the mask off because I've got to use the pen tool now to go after this stuff that's here in the very middle. So P key to get the pen tool. Again, do not do this with a tablet. And I'm just going to click and outline it. So I'm just trying to get to the area that is that is not skin. and you can select both of them. And again, in this time, you do not want to select the fingernail any more than you did the last time, but you want to, come on. But unlike last time, you want to get all of the blue background as well. We didn't do that on the last time because we were looking for just the sweater. So these parts have actually worked out pretty well for me. So I'm sort of happy with where this is going. So I'm going to go back to my path palette, double click on work path, and I'm going to call this finger background. And say OK to that. So I'm going to load this as a selection, hover over the thumbnail, command click, go back now to our layers palette, click on the red X that's actually hiding this on the layer mask. So you can see this area right in here. None of this should be showing. We've got, we need to clean up those edges. So if you, again, we've got to soften it first because it's the pen tool. You need to soften it a little bit. Up to the select menu, down to modify, down to feather, a half a pixel. And then the area that's inside, I want to make sure that that is now completely hidden. So this area I need to fill with black. So again, with your layer mask selected, black is my background color, command delete will clean up that part. Unfortunately, if you take a look up at here, it didn't clean up the finger that's right under here. So look up at my screen to see where I'm talking about. I need to fix these areas as well. So I cleaned out the whole part. This area of the finger right down here is also problematic because it's missing. So I've filled the area now that needed it with black that needed to be, but now the opposite areas I need to actually add white. However, if I start to paint with white right now, the selection is controlling where I can paint, and the selection is saying you can only paint inside this area. You can't do the other. So you need to invert your selection. So to do that, come up to the select menu and do inverse here. We're not inverting the image, we're inversing the selection. So before you do it, look at this right now. I've got marching ants that are here, but I don't have any marching ants that are going around the outside of my image. When I invert this up to the select menu, down to inverse, you will get marching ants around the outside of the image. Now we don't see these because I'm zoomed in, but if you double click on the hand, you'll actually see there's marching ants going around this whole thing. So now when I'm actually working on this and painting, the area that's on the inside of now is protected, but the area on the outside I can paint. Now I want these areas of skin, these missing areas, to show. So I'm going to hit the B key to get a brush, change it back to a normal brush, make sure it's set to 100% hard, 100% opacity, 100% flow. White is my foreground color, which will allow this stuff to show, and I simply paint across that, and I paint across that, and probably the line that's right down there, and I've actually fixed all of that. I'm going to see what's going on in this area that's around the other selection. It needs the same help. So again, I'm going to clean this up right down in here, and that part that's right down in there, and this part that's right down in here. And double click on the hand. And this is now my skin. Command D to deselect. I just realized that I don't need the hair on the other side because that's actually all, that's not supposed to be a part of this. This is just my skin mask. So I'm going to save my image. Okay, and then we have one last thing to do. So has everybody got this part reasonably well done? Okay. So right now, I've got a whole series of layer masks. If you actually look over on your channels palette, you'll see I've only got a single one that's over here, and it's this one called Skin Mask, and there's a slash next to it. What that's telling me is that I've got a layer with a layer mask on it, and this is just showing me the layer mask. This is not a saved selection yet. It's gonna be in a minute, but it's not one yet. So if you click on the sweater channel, you'll actually see this changes to sweater. So the only thing I'm seeing over here are the layer masks. I haven't saved any of them yet. I want to save them all. So I'm going to come back and I'm going to click on hair up here at the very top so that you don't see any of those masks underneath, so you don't get confused. Hover over the thumbnail of the skin. Do not select it, just hover over the thumbnail. Command click will load it as a selection, and we are going to save that selection. Up to the select menu, down to save selection, and just call it skin. And say OK. And now you will notice at the very bottom, you have a now saved skin alpha channel. Hit Command D to deselect and hover over the thumbnail of the sweater. Again, do not pick the sweater layer, hover over the thumbnail, Command click loads the sweater up to the select menu, down to save selection and call it sweater. And say OK. Command D to deselect, and then finally we're going to do the blue background. Hover over the thumbnail, do not select the layer, Command click up to the filter menu, up to the select menu, down to save selection, and call it blue background. And say OK. Command D to deselect. Now if we come up to the very top and we turn on the hair layer and turn off the eyeball on the skin that was underneath, we only have one thing left to make. And this is the easiest part to make. You would think, okay, well now this is going to be the challenge, right? I've got everything else is made as a selection. So making the last of the hair is the easiest one to do. So to do this, we're not going to use any of the selection tools. We've already done all our selections. So scroll down to the very bottom. You can see I've got skin, sweater, and blue background. I'm going to click on this little plus, the box at the very bottom of my channels palette, to add a blank empty channel. So if you just click on it, it'll add this thing called Alpha 1. We're going to double click on that Alpha 1 and rename it hair, because this will be the hair mask. Then I need to invert this because, again, I want this mask to show the hair. So if yours is black, you need to invert it. Command I. If yours is white, you could just leave it as it is. So now all I'm going to do is load every single one of these selections onto this layer and fill them with black. So make sure that you've got your hair channel is selected. Hover over. Did I start this video again? Yep, sorry. That was really going to bum me out. Hover, so do not select the blue background. You want to leave the hair channel selected the whole time, so the blue around it. Simply hover over the thumbnail, hold down the command key and click. You now have a selection going, but it's going to be applied to this hair channel. I don't want the blue background to show, so I'm going to fill this with black. Black is my background color, so command delete, command D to deselect. Do you guys see a path showing up here? It's nothing more than command click, command click, command click, command click. It's over and over and over. It's the same shit, so hang in there. Hover over the thumbnail of the sweater, command click. Again, my hair hair channel is still the one that is active. Fill this with black. Black is my background color. Command delete, command D to deselect. And then finally, we're going to do the same thing with the skin. Hover over the skin thumbnail. Do not select it. Hold down the command key and click. This is now the skin. I'm going to fill this again also with black. Black is still my background color. Command delete. Command D to deselect. Now you'll see we've got a few little dovetail lines in here that we can actually fix. This is still my hair mask right here. The B key to get a brush. Make it a little bit bigger. It is a completely hard brush, so I don't accidentally spray into any of this. And you want to just, oops, X key to make black your background, foreground color. And you just want to clean up these little dovetail lines. And we are done. Hold down the Command key now to select the hair, as to load it as a selection, and then come over to your hair layer and apply it as a layer mask. And we are done. And now if we take a look at the 4 together, so these are my 4 right here, you'll see that all of this has worked out really well. We still got a little bit of dovetail issue that happens here. We've got this mistake right here. This is being caused by the skin mask. If we take a look at the skin mask by itself, so I'm gonna hold down the Option key and click on that part. We took it out of one thing, but it got put, but we didn't remove it out of the skin part here. So again, I'm gonna fix this really quickly. I'm gonna zip in here, hold down the Shift key to temporarily hide the mask and hide everybody else. And so it's this area that's right in here. The P key to get the pen tool, select this. And save the path. And say OK. Command click to load it as a selection. Up to the select menu, down to modify, down to feather, and soften it. And then back in our layers palette, click on this. This is where it's actually missing on my skin layer. I want this to show. That means I need to fill this area with white. White is my background color, so Command delete. It is now saved. It's now there. Command D to deselect. Command S to save it. And then turn everybody else back on. And this is my composite. Now, the only way that you'll actually see, so you do see issues right here. This is a dovetailing issue. There's a reason for this. These never go away. These can never be made perfect. The same thing here in the edge of her hair, this line, edge line of her hair right here. This will never, ever, ever be perfect. The edge where this is coming together here, you'll also see it here. It's because of the way that Photoshop deals with transparency. So you would think that if you had an image that had 50%, and then you took another image that had 50% and put one on top of the other, that it would equal 100%. That is not the way Photoshop treats things. So if you take a layer that's at 50% opacity and another one that's at 50% opacity and stack them on top of each other, the result that you end up with is 75% opacity. Because what Photoshop is doing, it's saying, oh, okay, you want 50% of the 50% that was already to begin with. So half of 50% is 25, and they add those two together. So you never get a perfect opacity, and that's what's going on in here. We are never going to achieve perfect opacity in here. We're not going to do it here on the edge of her head either. None of this stuff. This is exactly just as good as it is going to get. However, there's no real advantage of us deconstructing this image. The advantage of us all along was to simply be able to control areas of this image, which is what we're going to do now. So I want you to turn off all of these images, all the layers that we've made. I want you to turn on the new version down at the very bottom. So select that and make it active. And then we are going to screw with things. So I'm going to hover over. So again, I've turned off all the layers that are above this. I've just got my new version layer right here. I'm going to hover over the sweater mask, that saved version of the mask in my channels palette. Command click to load this as a selection. And then I'm going to add an adjustment layer to this. So click on the circle at the bottom of your layers palette that's half black and half white. And we're simply going to add a hue saturation layer on top of this. And now with that added, I can take the hue slider and I can make this sweater any hue I want it. I can change its saturation. I can make it lighter. I can do anything I want. Look at this. Look at these selections. Zoom into this. Are you kidding me? Look at this. Perfect. I'm now going to actually do that again, but this time I'm going to load the hair. So hover over the hair, the thumbnail of the hair channel. Don't select it, otherwise you'll see it. Just hover over it, command click. We're going to actually add another hue saturation layer to this to control the color of the hair. So I'm going to click on hue saturation. I'm going to double click on the hand to kick back out. Now the problem that we have with using this right now is we've got a selection. You can see there's a hue saturation with the layer mask on it. You can change the color, but this hair has little to no color in it anyway. So that's not really going to help me. It's only the part that's on the background that I'm actually seeing. So I'm going to double click on that to zero it back out. But if you click underneath the hue saturation layer, you'll see that there is a colorize button down here. If you click on that, it will actually put a tone of color in the hair. And now you can change the entire colorization of the hair part. So again, I think this is a little oversaturated, but if we want to pull this down right here a little bit and keep this into a red tint, you can see we've actually got a pretty good situation going here. We do have spill in this background. I'm going to show you how to fix that spill in just a second. But nonetheless, this is where things are going right here. Is this all beginning to make sense to everybody, sort of what's happening? And what we can really do with this. I'm going to do one last one. I'm going to select the blue background. So hover over the thumbnail of blue background, command click to load that as a selection. We are going to add another hue saturation layer to that, and then we can change the color of the background to whatever you want. I'm going to bring it up into the magentas and go for something a little bit closer to the sweater. Drop the saturation down on this. Yeah. Is this all making sense now? Why to go to this? It's just the practice of making perfect selections, but all the tools that you guys have to do it. We just used AI selection tool locally, not in the cloud. It was better. We used the object selection tool. We used the select and mask workspace. We used the pen tool. We used the lasso tool. You'll be happy to know that today's the last day of selections. We don't deal with them anymore. So we've pretty much hit them all. Anyway, all right. If you've done all these hue saturations layers, you can turn them all off. We need to look at one last thing in here, and it is the notion of spill. So if you go up and take a look at all of these right here, I need to make a selection of basically everything. We actually have that. It is the background selection. So I'm going to load this background selection, command click to load the blue background, and I'm going to come over to my new version. Actually, I take that back. Hit Command D to deselect. I want to make another copy of my new version. So come over to your new version, hit, and then Command J it to make a copy of it. When we'll just leave it as a new version copy. I am going to Command click onto the blue background. So hover over the thumbnail for blue background, click on it, and then come back over, and we are going to add this as a layer mask. And then I'm going to put a white background underneath this so you can see what we're talking about when we're talking about spill removal and how to deal with it. So select the original new version, then come down. We're going to add an adjustment layer. So the circle that's half black, half white, click on that, and then come up, and we are going to add a solid color, and I'm going to make it white. So again, right now it picks my foreground color, which is black. But if you come over to your background color, you will see that when the color picker is open, you can actually sample color from anything. So I'm just going to hover over the background white and click, and this will now fill it with white. I'll say okay to that. And then again, my mask is the exact opposite. It's showing the blue background. I want it to show the figure. So I'm going to invert my mask. And so this is a pretty good knockout. This would be the knockout that I would use. Again, this is the one that was made by our local device. But you can see, if you come in here, we have a problem. This is called spill. This is the old background color that's actually showing through here. We need to get rid of that. Now, I'm working on a copy of my new version. This is a destructive move. This is what, when you're in the Select and Mask workspace, if you click on that decontaminate color, this is what you actually, it'll do what I'm doing automatically. This way, we get control. So does everybody have at least this figure on a blue background? All of you had the select subject. I need everybody to get this. Are we all, does everybody have a version of this? Okay, so to make the easiest that you can do of all of this, I'm going to throw all of this away. Turn everything off except for the new version. Everybody has this new version, right? Turn everything else off above it. You don't need any of the stuff above it. So it's just the new version where we patched in the hair. Does everybody have that? Does anybody not have that? Okay. We're going to make a copy of this new version layer. Just Command J. Just made a copy of it. That's all I want to do. Then I'm going to select the original one because I want to put a white layer in between the two. So select the original NV, come down to add adjustment layer, click on it, and we are going to add just a solid color adjustment layer. It opens up, in my case, it's showing black. I want it to be white. So you can just use the eyedropper tool to hit the background color, which is white, and say, okay. Now, you can't see it because the copy that we made is sitting on top of it. If you turn its eyeball off, you'll see it's white. So I just need everybody to have a copy of the new version on top of a white layer. That's all we need. Everybody, does anybody not have this? Okay, then finally turn on the new version copy that's at the very top, and we are going to again use our select subject, our automated version of this. So come down to the, we decided that the select subject, so come down to the third tool down, the fourth tool down, and select Quick Selection Tool. And then in the drop-down menu for Select Subject in your options bar, click on this and change it to Device, and then hit Select Subject, and then simply add it as a layer mask. That's all we needed to do. So has everybody now got this figure on a white background with blue showing all around it, this spill? Are we good? All right, to fix the spill, zoom in. Again, this is going to be a destructive move, but we have a copy of this. We're doing this on a copy of the new version, so it doesn't matter. You're going to hit the B key to get a brush. The B key to get a brush. Make it a completely soft brush. We're going to change the blending mode of this brush now from normal down to color. 100% opacity, 100% flow. And then when you hover over, I'm actually also going to go to my pasteboard right now, just because I want to be able to use this tool outside of this image. So hit the F key once and you will be on the pasteboard, and you can make it a little bit smaller. So now you've got a brush that'll work outside of this image. So I'm going to make my brush a little bit larger. And then what you want to do is, what we're going to do is we're going to paint the spill away. You want to sample the color of her hair. So you have options. You could click on the foreground color. It will open up the color picker. You can move it out of the way, and you can click on a sample of her hair, and that is now the color of her hair. You can see it's a very dark gray, and say okay, and then we can do work with that. However, the easier way to do it is with the brush selected, simply hold down your Option key and you will temporarily get a color picker. So to see what that means is that hold down your Option key and click on her forehead, and you will see the foreground color is now the color of her skin. If you hold down the Option key and click on her sweater, it now has filled it with yellow. It's the sweater. Hold down the Option key and click on the color of hair. It puts in a really dark gray. Then we're going to zoom in to where this spill is. And what you want to do with this is that you do not want to change any color that doesn't need to be changed. So don't go painting this brush on the inside of her hair right in here. It doesn't have any spill in it, and it will change all of the color to one single color. And when you lose that variety, it looks like that's what you're doing. But use this brush. I want you to start first with this on her face. So just use this brush and start to paint on her face. And what you see happens is that this brush will change the image to the color, but the luminosity of the color remains unchanged. So we still have all of the detail of her skin, the detail of her eyes, the detail of her eyebrows, all of that. So using this set to a color blending mode of color does that. If you hit Command Z to undo that, Command Z to undo that, change your blending mode back to normal and do the same thing, and you can see we just completely obliterate this image. So this is why we are going to use a color blending mode on this area over in here. We want to maintain the luminosity. We don't want to destroy that part. So hit Command Z to undo that. Coming over to the hair, hold down the Option key, click to sample a color, and then this is the trick. You want to start from the area outside and work your way in to fix the spill. You do not want to start on the inside and work your way out. If you do that, you're going to change the color of this hair that does not need to be fixed. So simply click and start to work your way down. Boom. Gone. When you get down near her fingers, you'll see I went too far because I've got a soft brush. This actually changed the color on her fingers. Actually, this is still a normal blending mode. Hang on, I totally screwed that up. Change your blending mode back to color. I was wondering why that was so dark. Sorry, working on the image, not the layer mask. Color is your blending mode. Let's do that again. Much better this time. I had a class that I showed this into once, and there was a girl who just started crying. She'd spent years fighting this and never realized how easy it was. Anyway, I get to this area really near her fingers. You actually have to go to a hard brush at this point. Otherwise, you'll spray this into her fingers. So click and just run it along that line to not. Make your brush much smaller using the bracket keys and clean out the spill that's in the back. And then finally, back to a bigger brush and kill all the spill that's on the back of the hair. You do this as a knockout, and in an interview, people just floored. Questions about this? I feel like I'm losing a lot of people in here. And remember at the very beginning of this class, I made you all promise that you would stop me when you got lost. So this doesn't do you any good to just sit there and blindly look at this shit, because I would go to sleep. I'm shocked you're all still awake. Questions about any of this? Okay. I'm going to call this 257. Let's do a hard 10. Be back at 307, and we will do something completely different. Yes.
Could I see you first?
You could do what?
Could I see you first?
Sure. Let me pause the video. Okay. So we now are going to start moving into next week. We start retouching hardcore. But I still want to deal with the issues of spill, because these come up in every single composite that you're going to do. And there's other strategies for dealing with different areas of your image about how you actually fix that part and remove those parts. So if you go into our session number 5 today, student files number 5, inside there is a file called Choke and Spread. I need you to open that file for me. Everybody get this guy open? Are we good? Okay. If you want to see what's going on here, we've got, it's just an image that's shot on a green screen background, and there's a layer mask on it. If you hold down your Shift key and click on the mask, it'll actually temporarily hide it. And you can see, if we zoom in on this, this is actually the image that we've got going here. And then if we actually click on the big red X so this is now an image that's been composited into this background. Now there's a number of issues with this that we will deal with later when we get into compositing in terms of how to make this really believable when it comes in. Right now she's floating in space, so that's not a very believable part of this. We are going to look at how to do simple shadows today, but the part that I really want to talk about is if you zoom in to her shoulder, so I'm looking at her left shoulder, pretty close in here, you will see that there's this green line that runs around her shoulder. This is actually spill. You'll also notice that there's spill in her hair. You can see the green that's actually in her hair. We need to fix all of that in here. So this is all spill removal. But as you start to look around the outside of the body, the problem that we have with this is this. When I actually created this mask, I use, and I'm going to show you guys the action today when we actually get to this, but what happens is this, and this is in a digital world. You don't need to do this, but look up at my screen. I'm going to zoom in really closely to this edge right here. So what happens in a digital world, because of the way digital files are ultimately rendered, you end up with contrast that is placed along any edge in the image. All images that are digital are sharpened when you actually bring them into any processor. So before you even do anything, before you hit the development tool, before you do any of that shit in Lightroom or in Photoshop or in Capture One, the way raw files are presented to you they've already gone in and found all of the edges that are in your image and then they've actually run contrast on that. So if you take a look at my screen right here, what you can see is I've got a color of green right here. And when I use the action that I'm going to show you to select this green and then to build this mask using it, it doesn't select the green that's right next to her. If you can look at the green on my screen, it doesn't show up too well there, but zoom in on yours really quickly. Hold down the shift key, click on click on the mask to hide it. Zoom into this part. You can see that the green that is right next to her body is a much darker green. So the action that I use to select the green background does not select that super dark contrasty green that processing puts on every single edge. So we need to fix that. If you turn this on again, you can see that's why there's this fine little green line that's running around it. That did not get selected by the software that we use to actually make this green screen knockout. So we need to fix this. And the problem in fixing this is that it's not just a color spill problem. The problem is that, because if we can change that, it's actually that the contrast has been run on this. So I want to change this part of this. I want to fix this part of it. So to do that, there's a couple of tricks that are involved with this that all involve the history palette and working in the history palette. So what we're going to do is what they call choking and spreading. This is a trick that goes back to the days of offset press people. So we need to actually choke this. And so I'm going to show you what that means, how to control it, and on and on and on. All right, so the first step is to come over to your history palette and click on the little camera icon at the bottom. Does everybody have this snapshot naming dialog box that opened? Anybody not? Because you need this. You're going to type in pre-choke and say okay. So this is what the image looks like before anything is done to it. And you see at the very top of your history palette, you now have two little thumbnails that are at the very top. And the first one says choke and spread. That's what your image looked like when it's opened up. And because that's the name of it, that's what it gets named when you open it. I've actually now created what this image looks like right now, and I've named it pre-choke. Now we're going to do something to this image right now, but again, I want to make sure that you guys understand the process that we're actually doing here. So I want you to temporarily, you can leave this file right where it is. I want you to create another new file, synthetic file. Command N to bring up the new dialog, the brand new dialog box. So I've got a new dialog box just like I did before. I am going to, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? Does everybody have their ruler showing? If you do not have your ruler showing, you cannot pull down guidelines. So to make sure your rulers are showing, click on the View menu and come down and make sure there's a check mark next to rulers. You will get a ruler on the top and on the left-hand side, and you should never, ever not have those. So we're going to create a box of guidelines. So if you come up to the very top ruler, click and drag down, you'll pull down a guideline. These are non-printing guidelines. They're just references for us to look at. So I'm going to pull mine down to sort of a 2/3 of the way down. Then I'm going to pull another one down to, that's the one, first one I pulled is going to be the bottom of my box. I'm going to pull another one down. This is going to be the top of my box. Then I'm going to go to the ruler on the left and drag out so that I've got a right side for my box and then another one for the left side of my box. So I've just basically created this box of guidelines. Is everybody good on this part? Did that work for everyone? Okay. Hit the M key to get the marquee tool. Make sure that your feathering is dropped all the way back down to 0. That thing sticks, and you do not want to be using feathering if you don't intend, if you're not doing it intentionally. And then if you start right up next to the upper left-hand corner of the box, guidelines, selection tools will actually snap to grids, and that's what will happen here. So you just need to get close to this thing, click and drag out, and then come over to the other side and drop down, and you will actually have a box that sits right inside this. So does everybody have this box that's sitting right inside this? We good on this? Okay, I'm going to add a new blank layer on top of this, and then I want to fill this new blank layer. I take that back. I do not want to do that. Command Z to undo that. Let's just add it right here to the background layer that's sitting there. So again, I got the marching ants just on my background layer. I want to fill this with black. Black is my foreground color, so Option Delete, Command D to deselect. And now if you zoom in and you take a look at this, you'll actually see that the black is hitting right on those guidelines, and I go from a pure black to a pure white immediately. So if you hover over the black area and look at your readout, that's really weird. Hang on one second. This is exactly the problem I told you guys. I thought my color was black. This is not black. I'm hovering over this. I'm getting some, I mean, it's dark, but it's not black. So I'm going to hit cancel on that. If you've done the same thing I did, just go back into where you have the rectangular marquee tool in history, click on it, and then hit the D key to default your foreground and background colors to black and white, and then fill again. So again, real black is now my foreground color. Option Delete, and now when I hover over it, I get zeros in my readout. You can hit Command D to deselect. If I hover over the white areas right here, you get 255 white. If you actually drag your cursor from the white area down into the black area, you will see that you get two colors sort of like in between, two tones that are sort of in between that are really hard to spot. But at any rate, this is the process that I'm going to show you right now, is how you actually use choking and spreading. To do choking and spreading, what we need to do is we need to introduce mid-tones of gray between this white and black. So right now, I'm pretty much jumping from black to white immediately. But if I blur this black image, I can actually create gradations. I can create colors of gray that are in between. So to do that, come up to the Filter menu, down to Blur, down to Gaussian Blur, and we're going to put in a blur of 6. Now let's do a little bit more. We'll put in a blur of 8 and say OK. Now if you zoom in here, what you'll see has happened is the way blurs work is they simply take these two colors and they mix them together, and they do a gradient from where it was black. Then you go through a series of dark grays to medium grays to lighter grays back to white. But we've added those in-between colors of gray. Does everyone have those?
So I had a question. So before you said that, I was trying to figure out why the original version, like the very first time when we did it, it popped out like that. So I didn't understand it. It didn't fill like the holes.
It's because you still have your feathering is set on your marquee tool. Again, you got to set your marquee tool back to 0, not to 20. So start this again. Does everybody else have these shades of gray? Anybody not? Stop me next time.
My box doesn't fit.
Okay, that's because you still haven't changed your feathering either. It's still at 20. Hit Command D to deselect. And then change that to 0. And now try and click and drag out. And you're also set to ratio. That should be normal. Command D to deselect. All these things are sticky, so you need to change them back to their defaults, and now it'll work. So go ahead and try it. Perfect. And you want to fill that with black. Black is your foreground color, so in your case, I think it's that guy and backspace. It's either Alt or Control. I don't know whichever is the other for your option.
Backspace?
Yeah, that's it. Command D to deselect, and then you need to blur that. Up to the filter menu, down to blur, down to Gaussian blur, and put in 8 pixels, and say okay. Yes. Yeah, so this is now empty layer, and I don't really know why, but it doesn't matter. So you're just going to fill this with white, so select the bottom. Good, and then white is now your background color, so hit Command Delete, and then we'll fill that with white. And then it's all needs to be on one layer, so select your top layer again. And you're just going to do merge down, Command E. And oh, this you've got an active selection going when you filled it. Hit Command D so that you don't have a selection, and then back on your bottom layer, we're going to fill that again. Well, we want to get the whole thing. So again, just now hit Command Delete, and now it's all there. And then select your top one, and then Command D to merge it down, and then you're going to blur that. So up to the filter menu, down to blur, Gaussian blur, and about 8. That's it. You got this fine. Alright, so does everybody else have tones of gray or need help getting tones of gray? Because this will change your life right now. Okay, so with these tones of gray, what you can see is I've got the original guidelines. That's where the image actually was, right? Was on those guidelines. If you now bring up your levels dialog box, again, this is not going to be an adjustment layer. This is actually going to be destructive to this part of the image. Command L will bring it up. If you actually take now the black point slider underneath your histogram and you start to pull it towards the center, what you can see, what you're doing is you're saying to Photoshop, okay, I want these tones of gray to be made black. And as you continue to push this, this is actually called a spread. You are actually making your mask or this image larger. You can now see it's bigger than the guidelines were. That is called a spread. If you pull this all the way back down and you grab your white point now instead and click and drag it, this is called a choke. You are now making your image smaller. So this is a way to do this on the entirety of your knockout in one fell swoop. So this is the process that we're going to do to choke this image. Is this making sense to everyone? Yes.
Did you get to the levels?
Command L. Or if you can't remember the Command L, just go up to the image menu down to adjustments to levels. And you'll still get the same box. So again, what this is doing, first step, it's 2 steps. First step was to create middle grays, and the second step was then to say, okay, I want those middle grays to either be black or white, and that causes your image to either shrink or to swell. So again, if we're actually making those black, it swells. If we're making them white, it shrinks. So that's what choking and spreading is all about. So we can hit cancel on this. You can close that guy up. You don't need it anymore. You don't need to save it. So this is what we're going to do to this image. Again, I've got a pre-choke state already, so I'm feeling good about that. So I am going to choke this image. So you want to select the layer mask. This is where it works. It happens on the layer mask. It's got nothing to do with the image itself. It's all in the layer mask. So on the layer mask, I'm going to select it, and then I'm going to blur it. First off, before you blur it, hold down your Option key and take a look at it. You can see I'm going from, there's a couple of tones of gray in here, but there's not enough for me to really choke this. So I'm starting basically from a white, going to a black. I need to add more levels along this. So you can do this looking just at the layer mask, or you can do it looking at the image in real time. So if you want to look at the image in real time, just click on the image and then click back onto your layer mask so that the border's going around the layer mask. And then the first move is to actually blur this. I need to add those in between layers of gray. So up to the filter menu, down to blur, down to Gaussian blur. And 8 is going to be way too aggressive. So I'm going to take mine back and I'm going to start at like a 1. Typically this is what I do. I do it in full increments. So I'll start at a 1 and just drag across this, and then I can hit a 2, and you'll see the problem is getting a little bit worse, which is exactly what we want. 2 is not good enough. Backspace 3. 3 for me is probably the right amount for this. Now, if this doesn't work, it's not the end of the world. You just go back in history and you start this whole process over. But you will get a feel from how much blur that you actually want in this image. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK to that. And now I'm going to run levels on this. Command L will bring up the levels dialog box. And I never remember which of these to do. I don't remember whether I'm increasing the black or decreasing the white. So I just grab the black and I'm going to click and pull it towards the center. And you can see, yes, indeedy, I am choking this. And I'm actually getting rid of that. However, because of the amount of blur that we did, I feel like my edge is really soft. So I'm going to actually grab the white point slider and pull it towards the center, which will give me more contrast along this edge line. So if you bring the white point slider back, you'll see that your edge line starts to sharpen up. Now, if it starts to bring back your green that you're trying to get rid of, you come back to the black point and you start to push it in a little bit tighter. So I want everybody to do that. But before you say okay, I want to show you what's happening on my screen in real time. Yes?
The levels are showing up. Like when I have my levels up, it's just like white.
Hit cancel out of here. Okay, you're in that part. Have you blurred this yet? It doesn't look like it. So again, you can see it right in here. It was a Gaussian blur, but it doesn't look like it was enough. So go, back there. We'll just try it again. So make sure that's selected. Yeah, and then try your filter blur again. And say okay to that. Let's hit it even harder. Go back and come back down to the filter again. Gaussian blur. And crank it up to 10. Let's just see what happens. Yeah, let go. And say okay. You have a selection going someplace. So stop that. Go back to the very back. Hit your pre-choke state. That's just where you can start again. Okay, so then hit Command D to make sure you don't have a selection going. And then make sure that the mask is selected. And then we're going to blur it now again. And then just click on top of this. Yeah, just click on that. And then crank your blur up. I cannot believe this is not blurring any more than it is. Oh, let go. That'll seriously blur it. Yeah, that's too much. So good, drop it back down to like 4 or 5. That's so bizarre. You need more than that. So hit it back up to like 6, 7. Let go. Try 10. Oh, wait. Your preview is not on. Check preview. Now we can see it. And crank it down to 3. Yeah, contrast it up to get a sharper edge. Bring your white back as well. So, yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. So this is actually working pretty good for us. If you want to see what you're really doing, you can use your preview check mark to turn this on and off to see the difference. And it's choked it in, and this part's worked out really well. So I'm going to go ahead and say okay to that. Now at this stage, before you do anything else, we need to create another history state of this. It's what this image looks like when it has been choked. So I'm going to come over and click again on the little camera at the bottom of my history palette. Click on it, and we're going to call this post choke. Not choke, choke. And say okay. So now if we double click on the hand and zip back out, you can see if we take a look around here, we've done some serious damage to the hair. We've done some okay stuff to the rest of the body. The rest of this, as I start to look around here, actually seems pretty good on this. So again, if you want to see the difference in terms of what we did, I'm not going to show you that. If we just take a look around, you can see that the choke did a really good job of this. I still have some spill like on the boot, but that's actually going to be easy to remove. I've got stuff that's down on the boot down here as well. All of those things we can begin to remove. But the problem that I have is this choked her hair as well. And that it sometimes will just like literally destroy the hair. So I need to bring the hair back. So the way this works, and the reason we made these history layers, is that you can use history brushes. We can brush, we can paint with history, which is what we're going to do right now. So if you take a look at the top of your history palette, you will see that there are icons up here, and then there's history states that are down here underneath this. The icons are the ones that we need. You don't want to pick any of these icons, because what they'll do is they will take you back in time, and then you will lose this history right here, which we do not want to do. But what you do want to do is to be able to paint with history. And what that means is if you take a look at this top one that says chokeandspread.psd, the very first one at the top, there's a little icon of a brush with an arrow that's going counterclockwise. This is the history brush. What it's doing is it's saying, when you use the history brush, it is going to paint this image with the way it looked when this thing was made. So for us, I want to restore what her hair looked like before we choked it. So if you come over to the side, on the far left-hand side of where it says pre-choke and click, it will move that icon down to the pre-choke state. Again, you do not select this pre-choke state. That will fuck up all your history. All you're doing is putting the history brush icon right next to pre-choke. And then we're going to use the history brush. The history brush is located right underneath the clone stamp tool. If you click on that, you'll get a little flyout menu, and you have the history brush tool and the art history brush tool. We want to be using the history brush tool, and it works like all other brushes. So you have sizes. So I'm going to click on my drop down menu. I'm going to keep this as a completely soft brush. I can control the size there. I'm also have blending modes. I'm going to keep my blending mode at normal. I'm going to keep my opacity at 100%, and I'm going to keep the flow also at 100%. So then I'm going to come over to my image. You are still working on the layer mask, because that's what we just choked, was the layer mask. I'm going to make my brush larger. And then I'm simply going to start painting this area by her hair. Stay away from her face, because we did do a choke on her face. But you can see I'm returning all of the hair along with all of the spill back to this image, which is exactly what I wanted to do. So I'm bringing back all the hair that I lost when I choked this, and then I'm going to stop right there. So I've done the choke on her entire body, but I have not choked her hair. So this allows you that really super fine tuning. The other place you need to look to make sure where choking will actually cause you problems are the bottoms of feet. So again, I'm going to click on my history brush. I'm going to come over to the bottom of her feet because it's choked that up. And if we were looking and you could see any of the bottom of the sole, we've lost that. So I'm going to click on the bottom of the shoe and bring back that so it didn't choke that much out of it. And then finally, I'm going to do the same thing on the other bottom of the other shoe. And so you can go back and forth with these things. So this is pre-choke state. So I want to try this along the top of her jacket where we were. So go to the shoulder area, and you can see I'm just going to do a small area of the shoulder right here. I'm just going to click and bring it down, and you can see it brings that green line back. But if you want to get rid of the green line now, go back up to the top of your history palette. Now put your history brush in the post-choke, the icon. It goes to the left of the post-choke version, and now your history brush will paint what this image looked like when it was choked. And so you can just use that to erase it again. So you can go back and forth at any place on any of this image to restore stuff that was before the choke or stuff that was after the choke, and you can keep doing this forever. Now, the problem that you run into with this, though, is ultimately, if we save this file and close it and open it back up, those history states are gone. But as long as this image is open, they're available to you. So we can paint with time. That doesn't suck, does it? Okay, I'm going to save this image really quickly. Just to get in the habit. It's not going to be for your homework, but just to get in the habit of doing it. Okay, so the other thing that I want to do now is I actually do want to remove the spill. The issue that I've got here on the spill, though, is that this is a smart object, and I cannot work on that smart object. So I'm going to duplicate this layer. So we're just going to make a duplicate of it. Command J. I am going to then throw away the layer mask that was on the smart object to begin with, because I'm just going to keep that as my virgin. I'm going to turn it off so I don't see it. And then on the image that's above this, I need to remove the spill. Again, this is my safety down here. This is my virgin copy down here. But this one up here, I need to rasterize this image. You need to turn it into a non-smart object layer. So to do that, you come up to the layer menu, down to smart objects, down to rasterize. Or you come up to layer menu, down to rasterize smart object. It does the exact same thing. And when you do that, you'll see you lose the little icon that's in the lower right-hand corner, and now I can actually work on this destructively and remove the spill, which is what I'm going to do. Hit the B key to get a brush. B key to get a brush. Make sure that the blending mode of your brush is color. Make sure that it is a completely soft brush. 100% opacity, 100% flow. I'm going to make my brush now a little bit larger. So here's the trick when you're doing stuff like this. You want to repeatedly sample color. You do not want to pick one color for her hair and remove all this spill. Look at the variety of color in her hair. So you want to actually be sampling color that's near where you're trying to remove it. So I'm going to start in this area that's right down here by her face. The problem is that right by her face, I need to make this brush a hard brush down here because I don't want this to spill, the color to spill out onto her skin. So I'm going to start off with a completely hard brush here. I'm going to hover over this area of her hair, hold down the Option key, which will give me the color sampler. I'm going to sample a color of that dark hair, and then I'm simply going to paint that area out. At the very top, I'm going to then resample another color of light brown up here and run this across the top. Change the sample color to get around the back. Change the sample color again to go around the back in here. Change the sample color again down in here. Change the sample color again because now I'm getting into darker hair. But you see when I get into this darker hair, look up at my screen, it completely kills the color. It puts some shitty dark flesh color on there. You can just sample another color and paint over it. So I'm going to hold down the, actually I'm going to change this back to a completely soft brush because I can see those lines. Sample a lighter color of hair and paint over it again. All you're doing is changing the color again. I'm also going to hit a little bit up in here because that color was too dark. And then finally fix the last part that's down here at the bottom. So now this is an image that has had all of the spill removed from it. It's been choked. Look at the edges. This thing looks like $1,000,000. If you do another snapshot of this right now, and you can just leave it called snapshot number 1, and zoom into her face and her top of her shoulders, zoom into this area, go up to the very top of your screen, click on the choke and spread. This is what the image looked like when we started, and then click on your snapshot number 1, and that's what it looks like all cleaned up. But you'll notice when you click on these history states to actually see them, all of your history just got grayed out. If you don't come back into your history and select the very last state, the very next move will erase all of your history. So make sure if you're using, that's why I said don't ever click on these things up here. Just change where the history brush icon sits. If you've done this, you can come all the way back down to the bottom and click the bottom of this. This now restores all of your history. And so this is where we're at. But this is an amazing job right now. Again, this starts to get to be more believable all the time. So the last thing that I want to do while we're here before we take another break is I want to show you a quick way to build shadows. So shadows are the thing that anchors something into space. It's the thing that, I mean, if you look at it right now, you can tell that this is a composite. Look at her shoes. They're just floating on this space. None of this is believable for me, at least right now. So the way this image was originally shot is that the back of her heel was supposed to be on the edge of the rock at the very top. So the first thing is we need to move her. So I'm going to click on the move tool. Make sure that you do have this smart object part is selected, and I'm just going to push this up a little bit so that the back of her heel is at the back of that rock. So I'm going to zoom in here and show you. This is the part that I was talking about right here. So just so that we're all on the same page here. So we are going to add shadows now. I'm going to show you, we get into doing very complex shadows in this class, but I'm going to show you the way to start doing shadow work for the way it works for most people, to make it easy for most people. So how many guys, there's people in here who've already composited, right? Anybody in this room ever composited? And so have you ever tried to build shadows and put them in to make your image seem real? How did it go? So a lot of people will paint these in. I'm not that guy. The shadows that I paint never look real. So I'm going to show you a way to do it to build what I think are legitimately looking shadows. And this will get you a long, long, long way in doing your composite work. So this is going to be the very first of the compositing parts that we're going to tackle in this class. So to do it, you actually your shadows need to go on top of the background, but underneath the figure. So there are people who will actually put shadows on top of the figure. The problem is that, all right, so we can try this. I'm going to actually just select the very top layer, put a blank layer on top of this, hit the D key to default your foreground color to black and white. Make sure that black is your foreground color, and then grab a brush, the B key, and then I just want you to paint right on top of your image right here. And you can see that this is now laying on top of everything. It's on top of the background, but it's also on top of the figure. If you take this layer now and you drag it down so that it is underneath the figure, then now what you see is that you do not need to worry about shadows being on top of your figure. They only can be on the background. You don't have to worry about masking them out on your figure because they are underneath it. People get funny about shadows. We all know shadows. We live with them every single day. Is there any possible way in the world a shadow would be on top of this girl's feet from her feet? Is there any chance that this boot's shadow is going to be on top of it? No. The boot is controlling the shadow, so the shadow that happens has to only be ever under her shoes. It can never be on top. And why people put them on top and then have to get into masking them all out is beyond me. Simply put it underneath and you'll be good to go. So I'm going to throw this layer away. Instead, I'm going to just select my background layer. I'm going to add a blank layer above it, and I'm going to double click on it, and I'm going to call it Shadow 1. And hit the return key. I am going to go to my tablet right now, but if you don't have your tablet or it's not working, you don't need it. You can still do this with a mouse. This isn't going to be anywhere near the demands that retouching will involve later on. So first thing we're going to start with is the gradient tool. So the shortcut for that is just the G key. If you can't remember that, it's right in the middle of the tool palette. If you take a look down here, it's this thing, it looks like a box with a gradient in it. If you click on this, you'll get a flyout menu. This is also where the paint bucket is. So if you're looking at your menu and you see a paint bucket instead, it's just the wrong tool selected. So you want to select the gradient tool. When we do the gradient tool, if you look up in your options bar now, there is a drop-down menu on the far left side. If you click on that, you have what now is a new gradient. It's a new gradient tool. I do not want you to use this tool right now. It's better than the classic gradient tool, but it's much more complicated. And the classic gradient tool will do everything we need it to do. So I want you to go ahead and make sure that you pick the classic gradient tool. I also need you to make sure that black is your foreground color. So if white is your foreground color, just hit the X key to make black your background color. And then up in top, right to the right of the area where we picked classic gradient, you have another drop-down menu. If you click on that, it will open up. These are predetermined gradients. We're going to open up the basic gradient folder. And in the basic gradient folder, you have 3 types of gradients. In the first one, it's actually foreground to background color. The second one is foreground to transparent. And the third one is black to white. You want to pick the one in the middle. We want our gradients to be black to transparent. And then in the next set, there's 5 little icons that run across the top. These are different styles of gradients. The first one is a linear gradient. So I need everybody to double click on the hand just to see what this looks like, what these look like. If you double click on the hand, hit the G key again. We're going to start with a gradient here at the very beginning, the first gradient, the linear one. So it's the one all the way to the left. If you click on your image and drag across your image, you will see that it starts with black and it goes to transparency, but it does it in a linear fashion. If you hit, you don't even have to hit Command Z, just click on the next gradient icon over. This is a circular gradient. If you click again in the middle, sort of more the middle of your image and drag out, it does a circular gradient, and this is actually keeping them over. Usually they overwrite each other. So hit Command, Option Z, and go back. So we did the linear gradient. Now you're just going to see what a circular gradient looks like. Again, starts with a circle, fades out. Command Z to undo that. Go to the next one over and click and pull it out. So this is actually supposed to indicate, if you do it on without this image like behind it, it's supposed to look like, if you sort of imagine looking up where a wall intersects a ceiling, it's supposed to delineate that line or that shift in line. Command Z to undo that. The next one is called a reflected gradient. If you click and drag down, what you'll see is you end up with, it goes from transparent to black, back to transparent again. Command Z to undo that. And then the last one, if you click on it and pull this out, this is supposed to look like, again, it's supposed to look like you are looking, if you were inside of a church and there was a steeple on the very top of it that had 4 sides and you were to look straight up into that, that's supposed to be what this one emulates. But in our case, the one we want to use is the circular gradient. It's the second from the left. Hit Command Z to undo to get rid of that. So what we're going to do is we are going to use this to make our shadows. So I'm going to zoom in to this part of her image that's kind of close to her feet. I'm going to start right over here on the rocks with my gradient tool, and I'm going to click and I'm going to drag out just a line, and you will get a circular gradient. And you can see it's got a dark center and then it's fading out to transparency. I now want to transform this so that it functions more like a shadow. Command T will give you the transform handles around this. With the transform handles around this, we need to crush this thing. I need to make it more like a pancake than a circle. So I'm going to, if you click, look at my screen really quickly. If you click the top control handle and drag it down, the only thing that moves is the top control handle. I want to crush this from both the top and the bottom at the same time. So I'm going to hit Command Z. So instead, you hold down the Option key, click and drag, and you will see that it brings the bottom line up and the top line down. Now at this stage of the game, it's hard to see the whole shadow itself. So if you click inside the box, stay away from the anchor point. If you get too close to the anchor point and you click, it'll actually move the anchor point, not the shadow. What I'm gonna do is click on the outside here, and I'm just gonna bring this down underneath her shoe, down onto this grassy area where I can actually see it. So I want to build the shadow that goes right underneath this shoe that's right here. Mine is not crushed flat enough. It's still too tall. So I'm still holding down the Option key. I'm going to crush this a little bit more. And then her foot is in an angle. So if you have your cursor on the outside of the transform dialog box, you get the double-headed arrow and you can rotate this, and it will rotate around that anchor point. So I'm going to get it to line up roughly about what it would be under her foot. Then I'm going to click on this and bring it up so it is right underneath her foot. And let go like that. Now, at this case, I don't have a dark enough shadow that's in the front of her foot. It's pretty good underneath her foot, but I'm going to grab the control handle that is sort of at the front edge here, and I'm simply going to drag to pull this out a little bit more so that I get a little bit darker area underneath the front part of her foot. And I kind of like the way this was looking, so I'm going to hit the check mark to say okay. But now I have a problem, and the problem is this. If you turn this shadow on and off, you can see that there's a big part of the shadow that is in front of her shoe here. There's nothing to explain that. There's no shadow. Look, I'm going to turn mine on and off. You can see there's shadow in the front. There's also shadow back behind her foot on the rocks in the back. Those would not be there either. Those need to go. So you hit the E key to get the eraser tool. Make it a little bit larger. In the eraser tool, you do want to have this as a medium soft edge, so 50% hardness. You do want it to be a brush, 100% opacity, 100% flow. And then I just use my tablet here to scrub away the shadows that are in the front and the ones that are in the back too much. And this is the shadow that I've now actually built for that foot. Now, I still think it's a little bit too low and it might be a little bit too dark. If you feel like it, for me, it needs a little bit more shape, so I'm just going to shape this by knocking off a little bit of that part. And then I'm going to just drop the opacity. So bring the opacity down. And then back up again. And then I also don't think the shadow, I think it's too low in my image. So hit the V key to get the move tool and then use your arrow keys to just nudge it up into place. And that is how you build a shadow. So this is the first one I'm going to build. I'm going to do another one for her other foot really quickly. Add a new blank layer. Hit the G key to get the gradient tool. Click and pull out. Hit Command T to transform this. Hold down the Option key to crush this. Stay away from the anchor point, but grab this and bring it all the way over to the other side and goose it up underneath her foot. In this case, I can narrow it. It's too wide left to right, so I'm going to hold down the Option key and drag these handles closer. Set this down a little bit more. Use your arrow keys to actually move it up and down. That seems about right to me, so I'm going to hit the check mark. It's in a good place, but again, I now have shadow that's on the left side and the right side of her foot. Neither one of those would be there. There's nothing that will cause those. Shadows are only going to be underneath her feet. So the E key to get the eraser tool and erase the shadows that are on this left side and the ones that are on the right side. Turn this image on and off to make sure that you're getting the ones that you think you should be getting. Double click on the hand, and this girl now is grounded in space. Turn both your shadows off. Floating girl. Unbelievable composite. Turn them on. Anchored in your image girl. Questions about this? Change your life. Okay, I got 357, guys. Let's do one last hard 10. Be back at 407, and we will carry on. I've got some interesting stuff to show you. We might actually get done a little bit early today.
Can I ask you about my feedback?
Sure.
Assignment?
Yeah.
It said like it's hand painted, but
Yes.
I didn't really use the
So then it is likely then it was the object selection tool, because that also looks hand painted.
Oh, so
I just said it looked that way. I didn't say you
oh,
did
okay,
it.
okay. So I should have done the refine.
All the other tricks. Yeah. So, we've gotten through spill removal, choke and spread. We've revisited all the well, not all the possible, but the majority of the methods for selecting areas and doing all of that kind of stuff. So, I want to move into doing selections based on green screen. We actually do, it's not right now, but I think it's on, well, we can take a look at it really quickly. If we go to our Canvas site, I think it's session 10. Oh, sorry. No, it's session 11, chroma key right here. We actually will meet that day in the studio. You'll see there's a it says right here, there's an assignment to meet in the studio next week. So we'll start in the studio. I will demonstrate how actually to shoot chroma key. That's what most people. That's the more official term for green screen. So anyway, but I want to show you how to work with this. Pretty much 90%, if not, well, if we only look at the last 4 or 5 years, 100% of my work is done on green screen. So it's what I use to initiate all of my composites. So I want to show you the process of how that works, and also to get in talking about actions that we can build to actually do this kind of stuff in Photoshop. So this is going to be our first green screen knockout. We'll take it kind of from beginning to end, and then again, hopefully it'll be a good jumping off point. But the action that we use to do this, you will keep for and use for the rest of your life. So that's where we're going to start now. So if you've still got this image open, you can close it up. You don't need to save it. It's not part of your homework. We will revisit this later when we talk about really. So if you take a look at that composite, well, here, I'll show you really quickly. If we take a look at this composite right now, what you can see is it doesn't really fit. I mean, the contrast of the girl is way off compared to the background. The color is also off on the background. The scale in this is right. The perspective in this is right. But when we get into doing more, the real hardcore part about compositing, we will come back to this image. So you can either save this now or not worry, because when we come back to redo it, there's actually, I give you a version of this file that's already got parts of it dealt with. So just realize that this is coming up again when we, that I'm not saying that was by any means finished, completed composite, because there's a ton of work that actually needs to be done to either the background or to that girl to balance those two out. So just FYI there. So the next file I want to open up is, again, it's going to be in your session number 5. And it will be this, it's the folder that it's at the very top, the 201008115_VER Urban 02. If you click on this, you will actually see there, you may only have 2 raw files in here. You may have 2 raw files and 2 XMP files. It doesn't matter. Just select both of the raw files. So just select the first one, hold down the Command key and select the other. If you select an XMP file, it doesn't matter. They're going to open anyway, because they are telling us what needs to be done to this file in Camera Raw. At any rate, I'm going to then control click and say open this in Photoshop. And hopefully you'll open up into Camera Raw and you will have both of them. You'll have one that's got the girl with the card in it and one that does not. Did this work for everyone? We good? Okay, so Typically, I would make a custom profile for this, but we're not going to take the time out to do that today. You guys already know how to do that part, but I am going to white balance it. So if you click on the eyedropper tool under the color palette and come over and zoom in on the color card, again, you can click anywhere in this color card. I use the gray patch that's right next to the red. What some people will do is they will actually do a selection of this area instead of just clicking. So to do that, you simply click and drag out and you'll get a little set of marching ants. And what this does is it averages all of that area. So it's a larger it's a larger sampling point. Again, if you do that, it's fine. It actually works really well, but you want to make sure that you never hit any of these black borders when you do it. Otherwise, it will completely throw off what you're trying to do. And then that's all I need to do is sync this to the color that's underneath it, or to the image that's underneath it. So hover over the thumbnail again, click on the little 3 dots at the top. If you hover over the thumbnail that's got the card in it, up at the very top right-hand corner, hover over that area, you'll get this. These little 3 dots will appear. Click on those, do a select all. You'll see it puts a lighter gray border, a darker gray border around the other image. Then go back to those same little 3 dots, click again, and this time do sync settings. And now it'll say, what do you want to sync? The only thing we've changed is the color in here. So the default preset for what we're syncing is fine. And then this is the image that we need to open right here. So I've just selected it. I do not need to open the color card. It's done everything for me. And this is where I need to work. So you should have an open object sitting right here. So I'm just going to click on this to open this up as a smart object. However, I'm not going to keep this as a smart object. I am going to keep this as a smart object. But again, once I do the knockout on this, I'm going to have spill. So I'm going to just make a copy of this and rasterize it at the very beginning. You could wait and do it later. It doesn't matter. But I'm going to do it now. So I'm going to hit Command J to make a copy of this. And then with that selected, up to the layer menu, down to Smart Objects, down to Rasterize, or down to Rasterize Smart Objects. Again, same thing. And you'll see that little icon goes away in the lower right-hand corner. I've still got my image that's underneath it, and if I double-click on it, it's still got all of my raw data in it. So this is the process that we've been using for the first, for the last 3 classes, is working with this, embedding the raw data into your file. So then this is the thing that I'm actually going to work on, is the image that's actually above this part. So how many people in this room are familiar with actions in Photoshop? Okay, so for the rest of you, the thing about actions is that they're very simple to make. They just record what you're doing. But anything that you do in Photoshop repeatedly, certainly anything that you do in Photoshop repeatedly that takes time, you want to build that as an action because it will save you time. So we're going to build an action that's actually going to separate this girl from this background. So to do that, you come over to your History tab, and there should be a tab right next to it called Actions. If you click on that, you will then see all these actions that are underneath it. Now, I've got quite a few actions in mind. You do not have anywhere near this many. If you've never built any actions, in all likelihood, you only have a default action group and nothing else. I've got quite a few that are unfortunately all over the place, but nonetheless, that's my worry, not yours. So to build an action, you come over to the menu that's to the right of the Actions tab, click on it, and you're going to come out and say New Action. And a dialog box will open up, and it'll say, okay, well, what do you want to call this thing? You're going to name yours Zero Selective Color, or Zero SEL Color. So that's what I'm going to name mine. ZeroSelColor. And then I'm going to put version like 31 in mine because I've got hundreds of these. So don't add the version for yours. You only need these one. In terms of where it's going to go, if you click on this drop down menu, you'll see I've got whole groups of mine in here. You won't have any groups if you haven't made any. You will have default actions. That's fine to leave it in that folder group, but just realize you can add groups, you can add sets over here in this to bring organization to your actions. So you can have retouching actions, and you can have processing actions, and you can have all that kind of stuff. But anyway, we'll be fine like here. Just leave it in your default actions folder, and then simply hit record. And now what Photoshop will do is it's going to watch every move that you make and it's going to record it. So you don't have to write code to do this. You just need to do what I'm going to show you right now. So our first move is to come over and we're going to add a new adjustment layer here. So come to the very bottom. It's the circle that's half black and half white. Click on that. And our first move is we are going to add a hue saturation layer. And then just let go. Then we're going to add another hue saturation layer on, a different adjustment layer on top of that. So not another hue saturation, a different one. Click on that same circle again, another adjustment layer. And this one we're actually going to add selective color. So once you have selective color on here, if you take a look at your properties channel palette at the very top, you'll see you've got a series of reds, yellows, greens, cyans, blues, magentas, whites, neutrals, and blacks. So what this tool was made for, it was designed so that when people are working on a CMYK press with a Photoshop file, they could go in and they could control the amount of C, M, Y, and K of a particular range of color. So within this reds, we actually have certainly you have reds, and then you've got cyans in here because cyan would be the complementary color. So if you have a somewhat desaturated red, it's all in these reds groups. You've also got all the brightness range of reds that are in the red group. However, what we're going to do is we are going to pervert this for a completely different reason. We are not using this to control printing plates. What we're going to do here is use this to build a mask for us that'll be better than any of the channels that we currently have in here. So what we're going to do is you're going to start with the red, you're going to come down here to the black at the very bottom, and you're going to grab this black slider and you're going to drag it all the way to the right. So what we have just said to Photoshop that we want to do is we have said anything that you consider to be red in this image, we want to fill it with black ink. So that's what's just happened. We're going to come down to the yellows now and do the exact same thing. They only ever touch the black ink in this. You never touch the other colors. Black ink all the way to the right. And you're going to do this for every one. The greens, black ink all the way to the right. The cyans, black ink all the way to the right. The blues, black ink all the way to the right. The magentas, black ink all the way to the right. The whites, these are now highlights, all the way to the right. The neutrals, black all the way to the right. And then finally the blacks, black all the way to the right. Now you should have one of two things. You should either have an image that looks like mine, which is solarized, or you should have a completely black image. The black image is the one that you want. If you don't have it, it's this radio button underneath it. You need to change your radio button from relative to absolute, and your image should be black. So does everybody have a black image? All right, then come back over to your actions palette, and down at the very bottom, you'll see right now there's a little red button. When we actually said we wanted to start recording, this little red button came on. Just to the left of it is a square. If you click on that, you will have stopped the recording. You've now just made your first action. To see if it works, I want you to throw away both of those adjustment layers. Come over to your actions palette, and if you take a look at the action you just made, it also has a little drop-down menu a little arrow right next to it. If you click to open it up, you'll see in the very part it said, okay, make an adjustment layer, made another adjustment layer, and then set the current adjustment layer properties. That's what it did. To run the action, you do not want to pick any of these steps. You want to pick the parent. You want to select the thing that you named, the thing that said 0 select color, whatever you named it. You want to make sure that you have that selected, and then come down to the bottom of your actions palette, and there is an arrow that points to the right. If you click on that, it'll run the action. And you should end up with a black screen just like we had, but you didn't have to go in and set all of those sliders. You didn't have to do all of that. It just happens that quickly. So did this work? Did anybody get a solarized version of this instead of a black screen? If you got the solarized version, there is an error somewhere in your action. All you need to do is click on the absolute button and you're good. It's easier than rebuilding your action. So if you click on the absolute button, so everybody in here's got a black screen now, correct? No? Yeah, and so run the action, click on that little arrow that points that way. Click. So again, your only problem is that solarized. Click on the absolute and you got a completely black screen.
I don't know black screen. That's not black screen.
It is. It looks like one of yours didn't get drug all the way over here. So also you changed. No, you also changed the yellows here. That was never meant to be, and that black was meant to be. But now your action is perverted. So you need to rebuild the action, but you and I can do that right after class if you want.
Okay.
Where you're at right now is fine. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go back up to the greens. So click on this little drop-down menu. Go back up to the greens. Now this is a concept that is difficult for a lot of people. If you've ever worked in printing, the concept of white ink. White ink actually exists. Mathematically it exists in Photoshop, but white ink also exists in the real world. You can actually, there are printers that have multiple colors in them, and you can actually load white ink as one of the colors in a printer. And that's basically what we're going to do. So instead of flooding the greens with black ink, what we're going to do is we're going to grab that black slider at the bottom and drag it all the way to the opposite side. We are now filling this green space with white ink, and you can see the background starts to get lighter. The figure is still dark, but the background starts to get lighter, which is exactly what we want to have happen here. However, the way this tool works, or the way this action works, is what we're hoping is that in a perfect world, we would have, if we had a pure green, a truly pure green, then the move that we just made with this background would actually be perfectly white. But we don't have a pure green. Again, this is a seamless that I've set up in the studio. I've put lights on it. I've captured it with a digital camera. There's no way that this thing is going to be that pure 100% 255 green, 0 blue, 0 red. It's just not. But I can make it more pure by using the hue saturation slider adjustment curve that's right underneath it. So I want you to select the hue saturation slider curve that's underneath this, and then up at the very top in the hue saturation properties panel, right across from where it says default, there's a hand with an arrow that points in two different directions. This is the targeting adjustment tool. You want to use this tool because it will actually pick the color of whatever range that we want to impact on this. So go ahead and click on that. Come over to your image. Now, on your image, it looks black and white, but that is an adjustment layer that is on top of all of this. If you turn the eyeball off on the adjustment layer, you can see all of the green is still underneath this. So even though we don't see the green, this hue saturation layer does see the green. It's because if this was reversed, if the hue saturation layer was above the selective color, we wouldn't, because the selective color has actually removed all the color. But because it's underneath it, it can still find the green, and you simply hover over your image on the green part and click and drag to the right will saturate your image more, to the left will desaturate your image. So you want to drag this all the way to the right, except we have a problem. Zoom in here to this girl's head. And you can see what is happening in here is that she has spill in her hair. And when I saturated that as much as I did, it actually flipped things. Her hair now in this area where you see that pure white is actually now more saturated and is going to be more a part of my knockout than the background. So this is too aggressive. We've gone too far with this. You cannot end up introducing a halo around here. It defeats the entire purpose. So I'm going to click again using my targeting adjustment tool. I'm going to click and drag back down until that, I take that back. What am I doing? Oh, actually, sorry. Hue saturation. Click on this. I'm going to reset this entire thing to its default. So I'm going to come up to the preset menu and go all the way up to the top default. That'll shut everything down. Again, grab the targeting adjustment tool now, click on your background, start to drag, and you just need to watch the hair. The minute it starts getting too light, like I can see it right now, you've gone too far. So back it off so that you don't see any of those little hairs going white. And to be honest with you, that means I'm going to get very little saturation move out of this. I've got a +2, +3 in my saturation. I can't hit this thing any more or any harder. It's actually done all its work. There are other scenarios where you'll have this and you'll crank that slider all the way up and it'll give you a more effective starting point to actually work with. But this is fine. We're good enough here. We're going to be in good shape here. I'm going to double click on the hand to kick all the way back out. So now my next move on this is that I need to make a copy of one of my layers. So you cannot make a copy of the RGB composite, not one of my layers, one of my channels. If you click on the RGB guy and try to drag it down to make a copy, you'll see you get the little circle with a slash through it. You can't copy that, but you can copy any of the others. Now this is a black and white image, so there is no difference in the red, the green, and the blue. They are all identical. It doesn't matter which one you grab and copy. So I'm just going to grab the red one and drag it down on top of the square with a little plus in it. I'm going to double click on that and I'm going to rename this Knockout and say okay to that. And then I'm going to get rid of those adjustment layers. They've done their work. We don't need them anymore. So select them both. Throw them down into the garbage. They've done everything they need. What I needed to make was this thing right here. So I'm going to go back and click on my knockout layer. Then I'm going to zoom into this image and take a look. You can see usually if you look, yeah, there's some little highlights that are like around her shoulder here. You can still see a little bit of texture there. That's not completely black. So I am going to do the same trick that we've done before. I am going to put down control points to finish off this mask. So I'm going to go over to the eyedropper tool, click on it to get the dropper to come down to the color sampler tool. And I'm going to put one color sampler right in that area where I've got a little detail on that shoulder, and then just another one right on the background that's out to the side. So now I've got two sets of readouts in my info palette. You guys have done this. This is how we did parts of Sunny. If you did that, that's how we did the original knockout of hair. It's all, guys, this is nothing new. This is the same thing that we've been doing over and over. Come over, I want these in RGB readouts, not in CMYK readouts. So hover over the number 1 point, click on the drop down slider and come down to RGB color. Do the exact same thing for the number 2 point, RGB color. And then this is my goal. I need to make this number 2 point white, and I need to make this number 1 point black. Bring up the command, the levels dialog box, Command L. In this, I'm going to start down here at the bottom with my black point slider, drag, and I'm watching my readout numbers of my number 0.1 right here. Get close to 0, but stop short of it. Go to your arrow keys and tap it in until you just get to 0. Then go after your white point slider and pull it way back. It's got to come pretty far back before you get anything readout. Get close to 255, but then stop. Go to your arrow keys and tap that in until you get to 255, just 255. You'll notice that I got tone back in my shadow point now, in my black point. So go back, select your black point, and then again, go to your arrow keys till you tap it back in and get it back to 0. So this is the minimum that we can do to get this to where we want it to be. Before you say okay to that, look at the hair up at the very top. I'm going to use my preview to turn this on and off to see if I'm gaining or losing anything. And I don't feel like I'm losing anything. I'm keeping all of that fine hair part. So that part's all working for me. I'm going to zip back out to make sure everything else seems clean. I've got some contamination in my background. I can see it right here. So if you take a look in this, if I hover over it, you see I'm getting number readouts that are actually in here. So I'm going to move my white point slider. If you click on the white, I'm going to say okay to this right now. We're just going to hit it again. To move your the point that's on my background, I can drag it over here now, and you can see I'm getting a more positive value, these 253s. If you make your sample size even larger, which I'm going to do, I'm going to take it up to a 5 by 5. And that didn't help me. I'm going to leave it at my 3x3. You can run levels again, which is all I'm going to do to try to clean out. I can see this. It's just garbage that's in here. You can see, look at all these. Can you see this on my screen? Yeah. You can see all of those, that little part in there. We just need to get rid of that. So Command L to bring up the levels dialog box again. I've got some positive levels in here. So I'm just going to drag this down till I get back to my 255. And that's cleaned out a ton of it. So I'm going to say okay to that. And this is the beginning of my layer mask. Actually, things are looking pretty good. I tend to scrub my cursor around. I'm not drawing anything. I'm just running around in here to see if I get any positive values. But this looks like it's actually exactly where I want it. Now, what I don't have are the feet. And this is always the case. So when you do green screen, the issue about the feet is you always want to have this on a black background if you can. So I'm just going to click at the very top now for my RGB channel. You want black down here because you're trying to avoid spill being kicked up on her body. So if this was green in the front, like if I didn't cover this with green, then that giant green light that's right behind her would hit this part in the green and it would wash green over the front of her body. And then you've got spill that's a nightmare to try to deal with. So, but it's really simple to go ahead and knock the rest of this out. So I'm going to zoom in to the left foot. I want everybody to do this with me. Hit the P key to get the pen tool, and you're just going to pen tool out the shoe. It's really simple. You can do this really quick. When you come across, you want to avoid the shadow. You're better off adding a shadow. But remember, that line underneath is not a solid line. I mean, not a perfectly straight line. And then once you get up to where you've got nothing but background, no more floor, just come over and complete your path. And then go over and do the other shoe exactly the same way. And then go over to your path palette, double click on work path and call it shoes. And say okay. I'm going to give you guys another minute or two to finish your path. Are we good? Okay, we're going to load the shoes as a selection. Hover over the thumbnail, command click, you get the marching ants. Go back to your knockout channel that's at the very bottom. Zoom in. Now the area that's protected is the area that's inside the marching ants right here. The only thing, so if I paint with something, it will paint on the shoes. I don't want to paint on the shoes. I want to protect the shoes. So you need to invert this selection. You need to select everything else. Because right now, here, watch. If you hit the B key to get a brush, and you hit the X key to make white your foreground color, and you paint across this, you paint on the shoe. I don't want to do that. I want to paint around the shoe. So Command Z to undo that. Invert your selection. Go up to the select menu, down to inverse, and now when we paint, the shoe is protected, not vulnerable here. But be careful about this. You'll see my marching ant line at the very top is very close. If you hit across the leg up at the very top, that's not protected. So again, I don't need my paths very big, but you need to make sure that you're not hitting that area up in there. So my suggestion would be to use a hard brush for this, just so that you don't need to worry about that. And just paint around the shoe. All you need is a little bit of area around the shoe. You don't need much more. So I'm just gonna paint around this one. Go over to the other side and paint around this one. And then zoom back out. And I can go now with a really big brush, so make my brush much larger. And I can just paint away all the rest of this stuff. Command D to deselect. And you have got one crazy wicked knockout. So to find out how well we did, has everybody got something resembling something like this? Okay, to find out how well we did, so we can make the change right now. Instead of, you remember, I always stick this onto something and it's always the wrong color. Or I mean, it's always, so anyway, I know that I want to show the figure and hide the background. So that's telling me that this mask is the exact opposite of what it should be. So just before we even use it, just hit Command I to invert it. This is now will be the working part. You'll notice that I just picked up when I did that a small area right down here that I can see. This again is another reason to look at your mask. So I missed this area with a brush. So I'm gonna hit the B key, hit X to give black my color, and just fix that part right there. So then we're gonna actually use this as a knockout. So I'm gonna go back over to my layers palette now, select the bottom layer, because I want to put this girl on white. I just want to see what she looks like on white. So I'm going to select a background layer, and then I'm going to put a solid color white between the two figures so that when I mask the top figure, she'll be on a white background. So select the bottom background. We're going to actually add a solid color adjustment layer. Again, it's always picking up the foreground color, so I'm just going to use the eyedropper tool to select white, or type in 255, 255, 255 and say OK. And then we're going to see how good the mask is. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to hover over the knockout. Do not select the channel. Just hover over the thumbnail. Command click to load it as a selection. Come back over to the top layer now and add it as a layer mask. And go in and check to see how well we did. Are you kidding me? I have a $500 program that I'm more than happy to give to you to actually do this work, because it doesn't do it this well. So we still have spill that we've got to deal with. That's part of the issue that we've got going here. So is everybody this far? All right, so it doesn't look like I have the dreaded edge on this. It doesn't look like I need to choke this. I'm gonna look at her legs. It might show up there. I'm not really seeing it here either, so I'm feeling pretty good about this. I do have spill all over it, but I don't have, I'm just holding down the space bar and zooming around. I've got spill, but that's really my only problem. So we're gonna start with fixing the hair part. Again, this is not a smart object anymore. This is now a regular object that I can destroy. So I'm going to hit the B key to get a brush. I'm going to make it a completely soft brush. I'm going to change the blending mode from normal down to color. And you'll notice I can't select color now. Does anybody know why? Because I'm on the layer mask. You need to be on the image. And then change your blending mode to color. Make the brush a little bit smaller. And then I just keep one hand on the option key just to continue to give me sampler points. And the other hand, I actually do this all with a tablet. So as soon as it connects. So again, I'm going to hover over this. I'm going to sample a color that's close to the color that I'm trying to change. And I'm going to get rid of that part. I'm going to get rid of this. Do not paint on anything that you don't want to actually have changed. I'm going to sample the top again for a little bit darker and go over the very top of her head. Resample another color in here because I feel like there's a lot of well. So look at this screen really quickly right here. Let me show you what I just did. So I'm going along this line right here and I'm painting this and I'm feeling like, well, that actually doesn't look too bad. So I'm going to keep working with that. But just remember, if you get a color that you don't like, so I'm going to come down in here. If you feel like this color down in here has got too much red in it, you can sample another color. So I can sample something down here that's got a little bit more green in it to help fight that. To help fight that. But I can also lower my opacity down to like 50% and I can mix these colors. So this will now mix some of that other color back into this to give me a more believable color. Not that I really think I need it, but I'm going to sample a color from over here, take this back up to 100% and finish doing this. See this red down here? That's just way too strong. It's way too obvious. Command Z to undo that, and I'm going to pick a more neutral color from over there and try that part. If you feel like that's still too strong, like it's still got too much red in it, I'm going to hit Command Z to do that. You can always click on your foreground color picker, and this is actually where we can control this part. So if I click on my red channel part right here, I can back the red off in there and say okay to that. And then when I paint with this, it doesn't have anywhere near as much red in it. Then the area that's right next to her cheek, you need to come in from the other side. So I'm going to hold down the color sampler point. You don't want to click this super red rougey makeup part. That's not where it is. It's more down here in skin that doesn't have any of that in it. Make your brush smaller and then simply take out the spill that's on the side of her face. That's also on the side of her neck. That's underneath her chin as well. And there's a little bit over in there, so that gets rid of that. You can resample another color of hair and get rid of the lock that's right by her shoulder. And then once we get into the dress itself, hold down the Option key, sample. It's just a black, and you're going to get rid of all the spill that's in the sparkly stuff on the dress. That's all the way up. And I'm just holding down the Option key to come in. I do have a small amount on her arm that I might want to choke later right here. It doesn't look like much, but if we should have time. I'm going to just finish getting rid of this spill really quick. There's always spill that ends up being on leather because it's shiny, but we can get rid of that and this and this and that. Zip over to the other side. There's spill right on the top of the leather right there. Her legs look pretty clean. There's spill right here along this leg right here. So I'm sampling just a general color in there to get rid of that. And then sample again on the dress to get rid of that. There's a small little amount right at her armpit. Some of the sparkles right there. And this is actually turning out to be pretty good composite right here. So at this stage of the game, I would save this. So up, save menu, as, save your, just get in the habit of saving your work repeatedly. So I'm going to go into my toss volume. I'm going to hit save from that. So the last thing I am going to do is I am going to choke this arm because I think that area is a problem. It's small and subtle, but this is the difference in making it right or making it wrong. You can try to remove this if you think it's spill, but I don't. It's a hard line. You're still going to see this hard line, but I could go to my brush. I'm going to sample this skin color right here and run it down along this. And actually, that's not doing a bad job at all. So this is how I'm going to deal with it as opposed to choking it. We will look at choking in other images later on. If you've got it on one arm, there's a chance you have it on the other arm. Yep, you've got it right down here in the middle of the hand, right in here. So you can get rid of that part as well. And it's this edge as well. It's the left edge is what's causing a lot of this. Resample color here because I went too high with that. And I can fix this. It doesn't go that far back. And there you go. Questions about this? Did this work for everyone? Okay, I want to show you one last thing here really quickly. It's got, just so that you know, because this, action that we built is not a one-hit wonder. I want you to go ahead and build and just run it again right now. So go over your zero selective color. I'm going to turn off the everything so that we just start with the green image again. So again, you can run the actions all sitting on top of the layers we've turned off. So go ahead and run your action again. Your image should be black. What I wanted everybody to realize is that doing the green thing is not the only thing that you can do in here. If you come down to the whites and you pull the black slider all the way to the left, sorry, that was the wrong one. Sorry, let me run this action again. Drop down to your whites, grab your black point, the black ink slider, and take it all the way to the left. What is this I'm looking at right now? That's a highlight mask. Drag the black all the way back again. Go to the neutrals. Drag the white, the black slider all the way back. What is this? This is a midtone mask. Drag this all the way back again. Come down to the blacks, drag this all the way to the left. What's this? It's a shadow mask. So when you want to go drink for free tonight, tell all your friends who are somewhat inquisitive about Photoshop that you can make one of the most difficult things in the world. You can make a highlight shadow mask. And they'll go, not possible. And you go, sure. Just do this for the blacks, go up to the whites, and drag this all the way back. Guess what this is? This is a highlight shadow mask. So there is a huge amount that you can do with this, of control that you can get in this. Just realize this is not all about green screen stuff. Are we good on this part? Great. I will see you guys. Oh, really quickly, the homework. So in the assignment, so the assignment is to knock out this figure right here using 3 different methods. The first method is you're going to pick a channel like we have been doing before. The second method is to use color range. And the third method is to use that zero selective color that we just did. Is everybody good with that part? Is everybody good with the color range part? We've gone over it, but really quickly, because this is the one that screws everyone. So this is the image. It'll take me 2 seconds to do this. Remember, one of our selection tools is select menu, color range. We went over all of this. When it comes out here, you've got an eyedropper. You pick the green, which makes a reasonably good mask right here. You can use your fuzziness slider to go back and forth. Say OK to that. It loads it as a selection. You can then save this, call it color range. Say OK. Command D. And this is now, again, the mask that you use to build using color range. We good on this? Yeah. Guys, I realize it's a lot. I realize that. Everybody's just like going, shit, overload. I'm just hang in there. That's all I can say. Just hang in there. I will get you through this. There's another part of the assignment, I think, really quickly. Let me just look really fast. No, I think that is it. Oh, the other part is your final project proposal. So if you take a look at this really quickly, it's just asking you for 2 paragraphs. One is what you want to do, and again, I strongly urge you to consider working on your own work that you can use for your portfolio. And the second paragraph is how the hell are you going to do it? So that's really it. And then the final project requirements you'll see here as well. So again, everybody asks me, how many images? How many images? I can't tell you how many images. What I can say is that everyone in this room knows exactly what is a final project and what isn't. So we will talk more about this throughout the rest of the semester, but that is also due next week, and I will see you guys next week.